She kept the plastic hospital wristband in a drawer for 11 years. He kept the memory of a name he thought he had lost forever. 4:40 in the morning, Harlem. Alara Vance, a black cleaning applicant, presses her white blouse flat on a kitchen table. Community college textbook on one side, tuition envelope $612 short on the other. She circles a job ad in red pen. Executive floor cleaning contract. Park International Tower, 9th floor, 9 a.m. She isn't chasing a dream, she's paying for one. 9:14 a.m., 40th floor. The HR director clears his throat. Mr. Park will conduct this interview personally. The frosted door opens. Park Tae-hyun walks in. Black three-piece suit, platinum tie clip. The black ink dragon tattoo curling up the left side of his neck. They call him the Silent Frost. Their eyes meet for one micro instant. Both freeze. Neither knows why. Both bury it. The interview begins. Professional. Controlled. He doesn't scan her body. He looks at her like he is trying to remember something. Then she reaches for a cloth. Her sleeve rides up, and he sees it. A thin white scar across the back of her right hand. 4 centimeters. 8 sutures. His pen stops midair. But what happens in the next 90 seconds, inside that office? Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The envelope was still $612 short, and the sun had not come up yet. Alara Vance folded the last bill and pressed it flat against the kitchen table with the side of her hand. 4:40 in the morning. The yellow bulb above the sink hummed. She counted again, twice. The number did not move. She set the money inside the envelope and wrote the tuition office address on the front in careful block letters. Not because she was going to mail it today, because writing the address made the shortage feel like a task instead of a wall. The community college textbook lay open beside her elbow. Public Health, Chapter 9. She had underlined 3 sentences before her eyes gave out. She closed the book without marking the page. She would find it again. The kitchen was small and clean. A single mug in the drying rack. A calendar from the Harlem Library on the wall. June crossed out day by day in blue pen. The blue pen sat next to the calendar. She kept things where she could find them at 4 in the morning without thinking. She stood. The apartment was on the 5th floor of a building on 129th, above a Dominican bakery that would not open for another 2 hours. In winter, the pipes rattled. In summer, the bakery ovens warmed the floorboards through her bare feet. It was summer. Her feet were warm. She walked to the closet in the corner of the studio and opened it. 2 hangers. 1 plain white cotton blouse. 1 black knee-length pencil skirt. She had washed the blouse the night before. She lifted it off the hanger and carried it to the ironing board she had already set up. The iron was cheap. It hissed when she pressed the button. She waited for the light to change, tested the plate against a folded corner of towel, and began to press the blouse flat. Collar first, cuffs, then the back panel, laid across the board like something delicate. She kept the strokes slow. A crease behind the shoulder blade would not read to most people. It would read to her. She pressed until it did not. While the iron rested, she looked at the back of her right hand. The scar was 4 centimeters, white, a thin curved line that ran across the base of her thumb toward the wrist, faint under the yellow light. 8 sutures, once. 11 years ago, the skin had healed clean. She did not think about the scar often. She thought about it now, because she was going to shake a stranger's hand in 5 hours, and the stranger might be the kind of person who noticed hands. She turned her wrist. The scar caught the light. It caught it and let it go. She picked up the iron and finished the blouse. The job listing was still open on her phone. She read it once more, standing at the counter with the phone flat under her palm. Executive floor cleaning contract. Park International Tower, 40th floor. Interview at 9. Bring reference letters and a photo ID. She had circled the ad in red the night before, on a paper printout she still kept, because circling something on paper made it feel closer than tapping a screen. The printout was on the fridge, held by a magnet shaped like a slice of watermelon her mother had given her when she was 12. She was not chasing a dream. She was paying for one. The dream was the last 3 semesters of the public health program at the community college in the Bronx, and the state license after that. The dream was a small desk in a clinic where she would talk to women who looked like her mother about blood pressure and diabetes and the medicine they could afford. The dream cost tuition. Tuition cost the cleaning contract. She drank a glass of water. She rinsed the glass. She put it back in the rack. She dressed in front of the small mirror on the closet door. Blouse, skirt, low-closed black shoes she had polished the night before with a rag and a drop of olive oil, because shoe polish was $3 she did not have. The polish had come out even. Nobody would ask what she used. She braided the front of her hair back to hold the fringe out of her eyes, and then pulled the whole thing loose again. Fringe was fine. Fringe made her look her age. She was 30, and she wanted to look 30. Not younger. Younger got hired for parties and dishes. 30 got hired for offices. She checked her reflection. She was tall enough. She was steady. The blouse fit clean at the shoulders. The scar on her right hand was there because it was always there. She picked up the modest black leather crossbody bag from the hook by the door. Inside were 3 folded reference letters in a plastic sleeve, her ID, a small notebook, a blue pen that matched the one on the calendar, and a Metro card with $15 on it. Enough to get downtown and home. She turned off the yellow bulb and locked the door behind her. The stairwell smelled like flour and yeast from the bakery below. She took the stairs. The elevator worked most days. She did not trust it on the day of an interview. Outside, Harlem was still blue dark, the sky over 129th, just beginning to bruise gray at the eastern edge. A man was hosing down the sidewalk in front of a bodega on the corner. He nodded at her. She nodded back. She walked to the 125th Street station, 3 blocks. She walked with her chin level and her hands loose at her sides. Not slow, not fast, steady. The bag rested against her hip the way it always did. On the second block, a woman stopped her, a neighbor from the 3rd floor of her building, in a housecoat and slippers, carrying a plastic bag of trash to the curb. "Ilara, honey, where you off to this early, dressed like that?" "An interview." "Downtown?" "Midtown." The woman looked at her a moment. She reached out and adjusted the collar of the white blouse with 2 fingers, though it did not need adjusting. "You go get it," she said. "You hear me?" "I hear you." The woman set the trash down and walked back into the building. Ilara kept moving. The collar was fine. She did not touch it. The A train came in 7 minutes. She sat by the door. She kept the bag on her lap and both hands on top of it. A man across from her was asleep upright, a hard hat resting on his knee. A woman in scrubs was reading a paperback in Spanish. Ilara did not read on trains. She watched the stops. She counted them anyway. Not because she needed to, because counting kept her breath even. She got off at 59th Columbus Circle and transferred to the D, 2 stops downtown. She got off at Rockefeller Center and climbed the stairs. Park International Tower stood 8 blocks east. She had time. She walked. The city was fully awake now. Trucks were unloading crates of cut flowers on 6th. A man in a suit was arguing with a delivery bike outside a coffee cart. A woman was smoking in a doorway, with her heels in one hand and her sneakers on. Ilara moved through it without stopping. She passed a diner window and caught her reflection in it by accident. She looked at herself for half a step. She looked like someone who had gotten up at 4:40 and pressed a blouse. She looked like that, and she looked ready. She kept walking. Park International Tower was made of black glass, 42 stories, a revolving door at the base, and a wide granite lobby past that, and above the lobby a long steel canopy that reflected the tops of the taxis. She stood on the far corner of the intersection for a moment. Not to admire it, to look at the door and understand where the door was so she would not fumble at it in front of a stranger. Then she crossed. The revolving door was heavier than it looked. She pushed it with one shoulder and let it turn her into the lobby. Cold air, marble, a ceiling too high to see without leaning back. At the front desk sat a white woman in her mid-40s in a gray corporate blazer. Her hair was pinned back with a tortoise-shell clip. Her name tag read, M. Hollis, Reception. She was drinking coffee out of a paper cup and reading something on a screen below the counter. Ilara approached. She waited until Margaret Hollis lifted her eyes. "Good morning," Ilara said. "Interview at 9, 40th floor. Executive floor cleaning." Margaret Hollis's eyes flicked over her once, top to bottom, the way certain people looked at other people, and settled somewhere near the collar of the white blouse. "ID," she said. Alara took her ID from the plastic sleeve in her bag and set it on the counter. Margaret Hollis picked it up. She looked at it. She looked at Alara. She typed something. She waited. She typed again. "You're early," she said. "Yes. Bank of elevators on the right. Card is single use." She slid a small white plastic card across the counter without looking up. 40th floor only. Do not press any other button. Understood. Margaret Hollis returned to her screen. Alara took the card. She said thank you. Margaret Hollis did not answer. The elevator was empty, silent. It moved so smoothly that she only knew she was rising because the numbers on the panel climbed. 15, 22, 31, 38, 40. The doors opened onto a corridor of dark walnut and pale carpet. The air smelled faintly of expensive paper. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang once and was answered. A man in a mid-gray, off-the-rack suit was waiting near the reception desk of the executive floor. He was in his late 40s, with a slight stomach, tired, kind eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses, receding hairline combed back. A silver company lanyard hung at his chest. "Miss Vance." "Yes." "Han Jae-won, HR." He offered his hand. She shook it. Firm, brief. She let go first. "You're early," he said. But he said it the way people say it when they mean good. "Please, this way." He led her past the reception desk toward a small side room with a table and 2 chairs. A pitcher of water, 2 glasses, a folder. He gestured to a chair. She sat. He sat opposite. "I've reviewed your letters," he said, opening the folder. "St. Luke's evening shift, 2 years. The Bronx Public Library, 3 years, part-time. Both letters are strong. Miss Ruiz at St. Luke's wrote a whole paragraph on how you handled the pediatric ward after hours. That was kind of her." "It was accurate," he said, and glanced up briefly. He asked her about hours, she answered. He asked about lifting weight, she answered. He asked whether she was comfortable working alone on a floor after everyone else had left the building. She said yes. Then he closed the folder halfway and did not open it again. "There is one adjustment to today's interview," he said. "Ordinarily, I would conduct it and forward my recommendation. This morning, however, Mr. Park has decided to conduct the interview personally." Alara did not move. "Mr. Park," she said. "Not a question, exactly. A confirmation. Mr. Park Tae-hyun. He rarely does this. When he does, it's usually for senior appointments. He has requested it for this contract." "Any reason?" "He does not explain his reasons to me, Miss Vance." He said it without irritation, just as a fact of his life. She nodded once. Han Jae-won stood. "It will be a moment. I'll come get you." He left the room. Alara set both hands flat on the table. She did not look at them. She looked at the pitcher of water. She counted the ice cubes. 4. 2 of them were fused. She did not know why her chest had tightened when Han Jae-won said the name. It was a name. Park was a common surname. Tae-hyun was a common given name. She had heard variations of it 100 times in the city. She pulled the tightness apart with her breathing the way she had taught herself to do. Slow in, slow out. She looked at the ice. 9:14, by the small clock on the wall. She thought, briefly and against her will, of a hospital corridor 11 years ago, a voice she had never heard again, except in the parts of her sleep that did not wake her up. She had been 19. There had been ice on the floor and gauze on her hand and a stranger's coat over her shoulders. She pushed the thought back down. She had work to do. She was 30. She was here for a cleaning contract. Han Jae-won came back and opened the door and said her name softly, and she stood. She followed him down the corridor, past a closed conference room, past a window that showed the east side of Manhattan spread out below like a printed circuit, past a woman in a fitted charcoal gray pantsuit with a low chignon at her nape and a tablet in her hand, Choi Da-som, though Alara did not yet know her name, who lifted her eyes from the tablet and studied Alara for half a second, and then looked back down without expression. Han Jae-won stopped at a set of frosted glass double doors at the end of the corridor. He knocked once. A quiet voice said, "Come in." Han Jae-won opened the door and stood aside. Alara stepped through. The office was long. The far wall was glass. Manhattan lay behind it like a photograph. A wide desk of dark wood sat in front of the window, and behind the desk stood a man in a black 3-piece suit. He was 32, lean, broad at the shoulder. His face was cut clean, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, a straight, strong nose. His hair was short and side-parted. His mouth was a thin, firm line held habitually neutral. On the left side of his neck, running from just below the ear down along the tendon toward the collarbone, a black ink tattoo showed above the collar of his white shirt. A dragon, in old line work, mouth open, no color. A single small Hanja character tucked under its jaw. Elara saw the tattoo before she saw his eyes. Then she saw his eyes. They were dark and hooded and quiet. They found her face across the length of the office and held there. For a fraction of a second, not long enough for anyone else in the room to notice, not long enough for either of them to name, his face changed. Something behind his eyes moved and then locked back into place. His hand, which had been resting on the edge of the desk, tightened almost imperceptibly on the wood and then relaxed. Elara felt it in her own body a half-beat later, a small, hard drop behind her sternum, like recognizing a song she could not remember the words to. She buried it, deliberately, the way she buried everything that was not useful. He buried it too. She saw him do it. She saw him do it because she was doing it herself. "Miss Vance," he said. His voice was low and clear, and carried no accent she could place beyond the practiced flatness of someone who had trained the accent out. "Please, sit." He gestured to a low chair across the desk. Han Jae-won stepped fully into the room, closed the door behind him, and took the chair to the side, opening his folder on his knee. Elara crossed the office. Her steps did not falter. She sat where he had indicated. She set her bag on the floor beside her feet. She placed her hands in her lap, one over the other, the scarred right hand underneath. Park Tae-hyun sat. He did not scan her body. She noticed that first. Men in his position often did, and then pretended they had not. He did not. He looked at her face. He kept looking at her face. His gaze was not rude, it was searching, as if he were trying to remember something he had seen before, in a place he could not name. "Mr. Han has told me about your references," he said. "I have read them. St. Luke's? Yes. Night shifts? Yes. You worked alone on the pediatric ward after hours. After 10, yes. Were you afraid?" She did not expect the question. She held it for a second before she answered. "Of the children? No. Of the empty ward? No. Of the men who came in through the back at 2 a.m. looking for beds." She looked at him. "I stayed out of the way and I did my work." He did not smile. His mouth stayed level, but something in the set of his shoulders eased 0.5 millimeter. "Good answer," he said quietly. Han Jae-won made a small note in his folder. Tae-hyun asked her about the 40th floor. She told him she understood the confidentiality clause. She had read it twice. He asked her whether she was comfortable being on this floor alone in the evenings after the executive staff left. She said yes. He asked her one more question. "Miss Vance, why cleaning?" She held her hands still in her lap. "Because it pays," she said. "Because I can do it well. Because I am studying, and this schedule lets me study." Studying what? Public health. He did not say anything for a beat. "Which school?" She told him. He nodded once. "Small, almost private." "How much tuition?" She hesitated. Not because she was ashamed, because she did not usually give that number to strangers. But he had asked directly, and the question was inside the interview. She told him. 612 short, this semester. She did not say the 612, she said the total. He looked at her a moment longer. "Miss Vance, reach for the pitcher, please. Pour yourself water." She did not move at first. It was an odd request. Then she did. She reached across the desk with her right hand. Her sleeve was 3/4 length. As she extended the hand, the cuff slid up 2 inches along her forearm. The scar on the back of her hand caught the cool light from the window behind him. Park Tae-hyun's pen, which had been resting between his fingers, stopped mid-turn. He did not move. His eyes did not leave her hand. He did not even blink. The small, controlled surface of his face did not crack. Only the pen stopped. Elara did not see him look. She was pouring water. She poured it carefully. She set the pitcher back down. She took the glass in the same hand and set it on her side of the desk and put her hand back in her lap. The cuff slid down over the scar again. When she looked up, Park Tae-hyun's eyes were on her face again, exactly where they had been. "Thank you," he said. Han Jae-won cleared his throat softly, not because anything had happened that he had seen, but because that was what he did at the seams of interviews. Tae-hyun set the pen down on the desk. "Mr. Han will walk you through the terms," he said. "The contract is yours if you want it. Start Monday, 6 in the evening to 11. Access card, key, and confidentiality documents will be prepared. Your first paycheck will clear on Friday of that week, rather than the following week, in view of your—" He paused for exactly the length of a heartbeat. "Tuition schedule." Alara did not react. "Thank you," she said. He stood. She stood. Han Jae-won stood. Tae-hyun did not offer his hand. She noticed that too. Men in his position almost always offered the hand at the end. He did not. Instead, he inclined his head, once, very slightly, in her direction. "Welcome to the 40th floor, Miss Vance." "Thank you, Mr. Park." She turned. She followed Han Jae-won to the door. She did not look back. At the threshold, some small pull at the base of her neck almost made her look back. She did not. The frosted door closed behind her. In the corridor, Choi Da-som was standing exactly where she had been standing before, tablet at her side. She lifted her eyes and studied Alara again for a longer half-second this time. Then she typed something into the tablet, 3 quick strokes, and walked past them toward the office Alara had just left. Han Jae-won guided Alara to the small side room again. He walked her through the terms in his tired, kind voice. He gave her a slim folder to sign. He told her supervisor's name and where to pick up her uniform and card on Monday afternoon. He congratulated her, softly, and it was clear he meant it. She signed. She listened. She took the folder. At the elevator, he pressed the button for her. "Miss Vance," he said as the doors opened. "One thing. Mr. Park does not conduct interviews personally. I have worked here 11 years. I have seen him do it twice. All right. I only tell you so you understand the weight of the choice." "Thank you, Mr. Han." She stepped inside. The doors closed on Han Jae-won's tired, kind face. The elevator descended. She did not look at herself in the mirrored panel. She looked at the floor numbers going down. 38, 31, 22, 15. Behind her sternum, the small hard drop from earlier had not gone away. It had settled into something lower and quieter and would not name itself. She stepped out into the lobby. She crossed the marble to the revolving door. She passed Margaret Hollis at the reception desk without looking at her. Margaret Hollis did not look up. On the way down, her phone buzzed once in her bag. She did not check it. She would check it on the street. When she did, it was a text from the tuition office. Automatic. Reminder of the deadline in 11 days. She read it and put the phone back. 11 days. She had a job now that paid on Friday of next week. She did the arithmetic in her head on the way to the revolving door. It worked. Barely. It worked. Outside, the sun was high now. Midtown was in full noise. A taxi horn, a jackhammer somewhere down the block, someone laughing on a phone. Alara stood on the sidewalk with the folder pressed against her hip and looked down at her right hand. The cuff of her white blouse had slipped, very slightly, in the elevator. She had not noticed. The white edge of the scar showed at the base of her thumb. She pulled the cuff back down over it, slowly, with her left hand. 40 floors above her, in an office she could no longer see, Park Tae-hyun sat down at his desk without turning to look at the window. He opened the top drawer on his right side. He reached to the very back of it, past a stack of contracts he no longer read, and his fingers found something small and flat that had been there for 11 years. He did not take it out. He closed the drawer. He set both hands on the desk. He looked at the closed door of his office as if she might still be standing behind it. He said her name once, very quietly, not as a question. Alara. The word had no weight and had all of them. Alara did not move, neither did he. Between them, the interview table lost its meaning, and the fluorescent light of the 40th floor became a kind of dust in the air. Something breathable, something that touched skin. Han Jae-won held the tablet close to his chest, aware without understanding that he had just been erased from the room. Tae-hyun's pen was still in the air. He set it down, slowly, like a man laying a knife beside a plate he no longer intends to use. "Excuse me," Alara said. Her voice was steady, She reached for the clean cloth she had brought in her bag, the small square of white cotton she kept folded next to her identification, because a woman who applies for cleaning work does not sit in a boss's office without something to wipe her own dignity with if it should be needed. The sleeve of her white blouse slid up her forearm as she pulled the cloth free. The scar caught the light. 4 centimeters. A pale seam across the back of her right hand. 8 healed sutures, the ghosts of them still readable if a person knew where to look. Taehyun knew where to look. His eyes did not widen. His breath did not change in any way another man in that room could have measured. But something in the small architecture of his face gave out. The corner of his mouth. A single tendon at his jaw. The place under his ear where the black ink dragon began its descent toward his collarbone. That place went still, as if the animal on his skin had also stopped breathing. Han Jae-won cleared his throat. Miss Vance, if you're ready, we can continue with the schedule portion of the Han Si. Taehyun did not raise his voice. He never raised his voice. Leave the folder. Close the door on your way out. Han Jae-won looked at him, then at Alara, then at the space between them, which he clearly did not understand, and clearly wanted no part of. He placed the folder on the corner of the desk with the precision of a man laying down an offering. He bowed, he left. The frosted glass door closed with the small, heavy sound of a room being sealed. Alara did not sit back down. She was standing with the cloth in her right hand, the scar exposed, and her chin at exactly the angle her mother had taught her at 12 years old, when the principal had called her a name at school, and her mother had come to collect her, and had told her in the car, on the way home, that a woman does not lower her face because a man decided to look at her wrong. Mr. Park, she kept her voice even. If there is a problem with my application, I would like to know it now. There is no problem with your application. Then I would like to finish the interview. Sit down. She did not sit down. Taehyun looked at her for a long, quiet second, and in that second, the boy of 21 lived again inside the man of 32, the boy who had run 3 blocks with a bleeding stranger in his arms, because a stranger was still a person, and a person was still a life. He had not thought of that boy in a long time. He had trained himself not to. Miss Vance, he said, and his voice was different now, the corporate edge sanded off it. How did you get that scar? Alara's fingers closed a little tighter on the cloth. That is not a question on the application. No, it isn't. Silence. The Manhattan wind pushed against the 40th floor glass with a low, patient sound. An accident, she said, when I was 19. Where? An amusement park. Which one? She almost lied. The lie was already on her tongue, small and easy. The kind of lie a woman uses when a man she does not know starts asking about a place that meant something to her. But she looked at him, and the lie died. She had never in her life seen a man look at her with that expression. He was not undressing her. He was not measuring her. He was looking at her the way a person looks at a photograph they had lost, and just found again in a drawer. Coney Island, she said. Taehyun closed his eyes for one breath. One only. When he opened them, the boss of Park International was gone from his face. August, he said. The 7th. Alara's knees almost stopped holding her up. She reached back with her free hand and found the edge of the chair. How do you? I carried you. He said it flat, the way a man says the sun rose. You had fallen from the raised walkway near the wooden roller coaster. Your right hand was cut on the metal edge. You could not walk on your own. There was no ambulance close enough. I ran you 3 blocks to the emergency clinic on Surf Avenue. They gave you 8 stitches. You were 19 years old, and you told the nurse your name was Alara Vance and that your mother could not know. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. He was not done. You wore a yellow sundress with a small tear at the shoulder from the fall. You had a cheap plastic bracelet on the wrist that was not cut. You spoke very little English at that hospital because you were crying, and shock had taken most of your words. I sat with you until the nurse said the anesthetic had done its work. Then I went outside to make a call because I could not be seen in that clinic for another minute. When I came back, you were gone. You had walked out of the recovery room. You had left the plastic hospital wristband on the chair because you did not want your mother to see it. He paused. I kept the wristband. Alara sat down, not because she chose to, because her body chose for her. You are Taehyun. Her voice was almost a whisper, the Korean boy. Park Tae-hyun. You said your family owned buildings. My father owned buildings. You said you were leaving that week for Seoul. I did leave that week for Seoul. She looked down at her own hand. At the scar. 11 years of a scar she had explained 100 times to 100 people as a childhood accident because she had never known how else to explain the boy who had carried her. I wrote to you. She did not mean to say it. The words came out on their own. I wrote to you the address you gave me. On the napkin, in the clinic. I wrote to you a year later, when I was 20. I wrote you a real letter. I sent it to the Seoul address. Tae-hyun went very still. I never received a letter from you. I know that now. She smiled without any joy in it. She looked up at him. I mailed it. I waited 6 months. I told myself you had thrown it away without opening it because that was the softer story. I never wrote again. Something moved behind his eyes, not surprise, something older and colder than surprise. A door opening in a house he had thought was empty. What did the letter say? He asked. She shook her head. Mr. Park, I came here for a cleaning contract. I did not come here to sit across from a stranger and tell him what I wrote in a letter 11 years ago. I am not a stranger. You are the man who is going to sign a check for a service I have not yet performed. That is what you are, today, in this room. She straightened her shoulders. She placed the cotton cloth back into her bag. The scar disappeared under the sleeve of the blouse as she folded her arm. If the letter mattered, I would have been told it arrived. Tae-hyun did not answer. He was looking at the door of the office, not at her, at the frosted glass. His jaw had gone rigid in a way she could not read. The onyx and silver band on the fourth finger of his left hand had caught the light and become the only bright thing on his body. Miss Vance, he said finally, do you want this contract? I want honest work. Yes. If the contract is honest, then yes. Under what conditions? She had not prepared this. She had prepared answers about mopping schedules and cleaning solutions, and how she would coordinate with the night guard. She had not prepared conditions for a man who had once carried her 3 blocks in his arms. She prepared them now. I clean the executive floor. I do not clean your private office if you are inside it. I do not go into any room where I am alone with you behind a closed door. I am paid the rate on the posted notice, no more, no less. I sign no paper that says I owe you a debt of any kind for anything that happened before today. I am the woman with the mop. That is what I am on this floor. If any person in this building, including you, treats me as anything else, I walk. I do not shout. I do not argue. I walk. That is the contract. She said it without breathing between clauses. Tae-hyun listened to every word. When she was done, he did not smile. He did not look wounded. He looked at her the way a man looks at a woman who has just built a wall in front of him with her bare hands and dared him to try to climb it. Accepted. With no exceptions. With no exceptions. You will sign that today. I will sign it today. She stood. So did he. She held out her hand to shake his. Not the right hand with the scar. The left. He noticed the choice. He did not comment on it. He shook her hand once, briefly, professionally. His palm was warm and dry and steady. When he let go, he stepped back a full pace, so that no accidental brush of shoulders could happen between the desk and the door. She recognized the gesture. It was the gesture of a man honoring a wall he did not build. She walked out of the office with her chin at the same angle she had walked in. In the elevator down, her whole body began to shake. She pressed the emergency stop between floors 31 and 30. She sat on the floor of the elevator car in her clean white blouse and her plain black skirt with her modest bag beside her, and she put her forehead on her knees, and she breathed. For 4 minutes she breathed. Then she stood up, straightened the blouse, released the stop, and rode the rest of the way to the ground floor, with a face no one at the reception desk could have read. Margaret Hollis at the front desk looked up as she signed out. You got the contract, honey? I got the contract. Well, someone up there likes you. Alara did not answer that. She pushed the revolving door and walked out into the September light of Park Avenue and did not stop walking until she was 3 blocks away, at which point she leaned against a lamppost and laughed once, out loud, a short, raw laugh that had nothing to do with happiness. The world had returned a letter to her that she had mailed at 20. She started work on Monday. 2 weeks passed, the way 2 weeks pass when a woman is doing the job she came to do. Alara arrived at 5 in the afternoon, changed into her work clothes in the small locker room reserved for building service, took her cart, and moved through the executive floor in the order she had planned on her first day. She did not enter Park Tae-hyun's office when he was inside it. She did not knock. She did not speak to him in the corridors. If they passed, she nodded once, professionally, the nod of a service worker to a client, and she kept walking. He did the same. Except that twice, once on a Wednesday and once on the following Tuesday, she came back to her cart and found a small paper cup of hot black coffee on the top tray, still steaming, no note, no name. The first time she poured it down the sink without drinking it. The second time she drank it because she was tired and cold and the coffee was good, and then she stood in the middle of the corridor with the empty cup in her hand and understood that a man who had once run 3 blocks carrying her was not going to stop trying to feed her small things. She threw the cup away and made no comment. He never sent a third. Choi Da-som began appearing on the executive floor at the hour Elara cleaned. At first, Elara thought it was coincidence. By the 4th appearance, she understood it was a watch. Da-som did not speak to her. Da-som held her tablet, walked the corridor with the calm of a woman doing a full inspection, and left again without a word. But once, passing Elara at the copier room, Da-som paused for a fraction of a second and said, without looking at her, "The night guard's name is Mr. Rivera. He is a good man. If anyone bothers you on this floor, tell him. He will tell me." Elara said, "Thank you." Da-som said, "It was not from him," and walked on. Elara understood. She did not ask who else it might have been. On the 15th day, at 7:40 in the evening, the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor and Song Ha-eun walked out. She walked out the way a woman walks who has never in her adult life had to open a door for herself. Cream silk dress cut to the knee, ivory blazer, red-soled stilettos. In one hand she carried a small quilted bag the color of butter. In the other, a matte black paper carrier from a restaurant that did not put its name on its bags because the people who ate at it already knew. She stopped in front of the reception desk of the executive floor, which was empty because the day receptionist had gone home 2 hours before. She looked up and down the corridor. Her eyes found Elara at the far end, kneeling to wipe the base of a decorative planter. Ha-eun smiled. The smile did not reach her eyes. "You must be the new girl." Elara stood. She did not put down the cloth in her hand. "Good evening, Mrs. Park." "Oh," Ha-eun tilted her head. "You know who I am. That is efficient of you. I would have expected the cleaning staff to be a little slower on names. I read the company directory on my first day. Did you?" Ha-eun stepped forward. She did not stop stepping forward until she was close enough that Elara could smell her perfume, which was expensive and cold, like a florist's refrigerator at 4 in the morning. "How thoughtful. My husband tells me the new contract was awarded to a small firm. He did not tell me the small firm was one woman." "I am one woman, ma'am. And an American. From, let me guess." Ha-eun looked her up and down, slowly, without embarrassment, the way a person examines a coat on a rack that they have no intention of buying. "Harlem?" "Yes." "How charming. My husband has a soft spot for hardship stories." Ha-eun raised the black paper bag, as if to remember it was in her hand. "I brought him dinner. He works too late. I thought I would surprise him." She smiled again. "You may go back to your work." "I did not mean to interrupt." "You have not interrupted me, ma'am." Ha-eun's smile paused, just briefly. "No," she said, softer. "I suppose I have not." She walked past Elara, toward the double doors of Tae-hyun's private office. She did not knock. She opened the right door and let it swing. Elara heard, from inside, the sound of her husband's voice, low, saying only, "Ha-eun." The door did not close all the way. Ha-eun had left it open on purpose. Elara understood that too. She turned her back to the door and continued wiping the base of the planter, because a woman with a mop who values her contract does not eavesdrop on a wife who wants to be overheard. She heard the wife's voice, bright and social, saying that she had brought dinner because he always forgot to eat. She heard the low answer, one word, then two. She heard the bag rustle. She heard a chair move. She heard the wife say, in a voice pitched clearly to carry down the corridor, "Darling, is it true you hired that woman personally? The one with the mop? I thought HR handled service contracts." She heard Tae-hyun's silence. Then she heard Ha-eun step back out into the corridor. "Oh, miss," Ha-eun's voice carried. Elara straightened and turned. Ha-eun was standing outside the office door with a small folded bill in her fingers, held out at arm's length. $100 bill. New. Crisp. For your trouble, Ha-eun said sweetly. You must have been on your feet all day. Buy yourself something warm. We hired you out of pity, and the least I can do is add a little kindness on top. The corridor went very quiet. Alara did not look at the bill. She looked at Ha-eun's face. She looked at it for one full second, long enough for Ha-eun's smile to begin to feel its own weight. Then Alara took 2 steps forward. She wiped her palms on the front of her skirt, once, cleanly, so there was no doubt what her hands had been doing. I came for work, ma'am, she said. Her voice was low and clear, and it did not shake. Not for pity, and pity doesn't clean a floor this size. Ha-eun's smile stayed on her mouth but left her eyes entirely. The $100 bill hung in the air between them. Behind Ha-eun, the office door opened wider, and Tae-hyun stepped out into the corridor. He was not wearing his jacket. His tie was still knotted. His face was the face Alara had seen in the interview 2 weeks earlier, the face of a man who had set his pen down slowly, like a knife beside a plate. Ha-eun. She turned. Darling, I was only out. The word was not loud. It landed the way a hand lands on a table when there will be no further discussion. Ha-eun's mouth opened. It stayed open for a moment without producing sound. In 8 years of marriage, she had never once heard him speak to her that way in front of a witness. Never in front of staff. Never in a corridor with the fluorescent lights on. Certainly never in front of a woman with a mop from Harlem. You are embarrassing me, she tried. You are embarrassing yourself, now. She stared at him. She was calculating, quickly, the audience. 1 cleaner, empty desks, security cameras. She smiled the corner of her mouth back into place. She lowered the $100 bill and slipped it back into her butter-yellow bag with the grace of a woman who has never lost an argument in a room she owned. Of course, darling. I'll wait for you at home. Do not wait for me tonight. Her eyes flashed. But she nodded, once, small, and walked to the elevator on stilettos that did not rush. The doors closed on her cream silk and her cold perfume and her unspent bill. Tae-hyun did not look at Alara. He said, to the corridor, to the air, to no one. I apologize for what happened on this floor tonight, Miss Vance. It will not happen again. Alara said, thank you, Mr. Park. And she meant, thank you for the apology. And she also meant, thank you for not looking at me. Because if he had looked at her in that moment, she was not sure she could have held the wall she had built in his office 2 weeks before. He went back into his office. He closed the door. Alara finished the corridor. She finished the copier room. She finished the small kitchen where the executives kept their imported tea. She rode the elevator down at 9:10, signed out at the front desk under Margaret Hollis's tired eyes, and walked out into a Manhattan night that had turned cold at the edges. She rode the train back to Harlem. She climbed the 4 flights to her apartment. She did not turn on the yellow bulb over the kitchen table. She sat on the edge of her bed in her white blouse and her plain black skirt, and she did not cry. Not yet. Across town, in a house on the East River that had cost $22 million, Park Tae-hyun walked into the private study on the 3rd floor at 11 minutes to midnight. He closed the door. He locked it. He sat down at the desk. He opened the 2nd drawer on the right side, the one with the small brass key he kept on a chain around his neck. From the drawer he took out a black leather box no bigger than his palm. He opened it. Inside, on a lining of dark silk, was a plastic hospital wristband, faded almost yellow with age. On it, in ballpoint pen that had smudged but not disappeared, was written, Alara Vance, 19, right-hand lac, 8 SUT, 08/07. He looked at it for a long time. Then he stood, walked out of the study, and went down the wide, curving staircase to the 2nd floor, where his wife was sitting on the edge of a white silk armchair in the dressing room, taking off a diamond earring. He stopped in the doorway. Ha-eun. She did not look up. If you have come to lecture me about that woman, 11 years ago, her hand stopped moving. The earring hung from her fingers. A letter came to this house for me, addressed to me, from New York, from a woman. Ha-eun's face did not change, but her hands did not resume. Did you open it? An owlie. She looked up, finally. Her eyes were beautiful and dark, and very still. Darling, it has been 11 years. I do not remember every piece of mail that has passed through this house. Did you open it? 2 full seconds. No, she said, of course not. The 2 seconds had been too long. He had counted them. He nodded, once, as if she had answered a different question, and he turned, and he walked back up the curving staircase to the 3rd floor, and he closed the door of his private study, and he sat down at the desk with the black leather box still open in front of him, and he understood, with the cold, clean certainty of a man who has just found the seam of a lie he has been living inside for over a decade, that his marriage had not been what he thought it was, and neither had the 11 silent years that had come before it. He picked up the phone on the desk. He dialed 1 number, 3 rings. "Dassam," he said when she answered. "Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., my office. Bring the household staff records, all of them, going back 12 years. He set the phone down. Downstairs, in the dressing room, Song Ha-eun sat very still with a diamond earring in her hand, and for the first time in 8 years of marriage, she felt the small, cold breath of a door she thought she had locked forever, quietly beginning to open behind her. Alara reached for the microfiber cloth on the corner of the credenza, and her sleeve slid up 2 inches. Just 2 inches. Enough. Taehyun's pen stopped in the air above the folder. He did not blink. He did not lean forward. He did nothing that a room full of assistants would have noticed, but his eyes fixed on the back of her right hand with a stillness that had cost him 12 years to learn, and inside that stillness, something old and buried tore loose. The scar was thin, white, about 4 centimeters long. It ran in a soft diagonal across the tendons, faded now, the trace of 8 sutures that a rushed young resident had closed in a fluorescent hallway a long time ago. He knew that scar. He had watched it being stitched. Alara felt the change in the air before she understood it. She looked up. His face had not moved, and yet his face had moved. Something in the corner of his mouth, something in the way he was suddenly not breathing. She pulled the sleeve back down. Too late. "Miss Vance," he said. His voice came out even. He had trained it to come out even in worse rooms than this. "May I see your hand?" Han Jae-won lifted his head from his tablet. Alara did not move. "My hand, Mr. Park?" "The right one." She looked at Han. Han looked at Taehyun. Nobody spoke. Then Alara extended her arm across the desk, palm down, the way a witness swears in a courtroom, and slid the cuff of the white cotton back to her wrist. Taehyun did not touch her. He looked. He looked for 1 full second, and then a second more, and in those 2 seconds, a boy in a torn windbreaker was running through the wet asphalt of a New Jersey amusement park with a 19-year-old girl bleeding onto his shoulder. He looked up at her face. He said 1 word. "Alara." The office went silent in a way that offices are not usually silent. Han Jae-won opened his mouth to say something professional and closed it again. Choi Da-som, who had entered at the door with 2 coffees on a tray, stopped at the threshold and did not step forward. Alara heard her own name in his mouth, and it was the same voice, deeper, steadier, but the same voice. Her lips moved before her brain arrived. "Taehyun?" She whispered it. She did not mean to whisper it. It came out as a whisper because it had been sitting behind her teeth for 11 years. Han Jae-won looked at Choi Da-som. Choi Da-som looked at the floor. In the language of Park International, that look meant leave, and leave now, and take the coffees with you. She turned on her low black heels without a sound and closed the frosted glass door on her way out. Han followed, tablet under his arm, without asking permission and without needing to. The door clicked. Taehyun and Alara were alone in a room 40 floors above the city. She lowered her hand slowly to the desk. The scar caught a slice of the cold winter light coming off the glass wall. "You're the interview," he said. "I'm the interview. You applied to clean this floor. I applied to clean this floor." He sat back, not to distance himself, to hold himself in the chair. There was a small tremor in his left hand that he pressed flat against the folder to kill. "How old were you?" he said, "the last time I saw you." 19. "You were bleeding." "I know." "You were bleeding a lot." "I know." He shut his eyes for 1 breath. Then he opened them, and he was Park Tae-hyun again, mafia boss, 32 years old, the silent frost, the man who had not let his voice shake in front of another human being since he was 23 years old. Sit down, he said. Please, sit down. She sat. He got up. He walked to the glass wall and put his hand flat against it, palm to the city, back to her. He stood like that for almost 20 seconds. She watched the line of his shoulders under the black jacket. She watched the black ink dragon at the side of his neck, the small hanja tucked under its jaw. Endurance. She could read the character. She had spent a year of community college nights learning to read characters like that one. She had never told anyone why. He turned. I wrote to you, he said. I wrote to you for 8 months. I never got a letter. I know you didn't. I wrote to you too. He did not move. When? After the surgery. When my mother took me home, I wrote you one letter. I mailed it to the address you gave me at the hospital, the one your father owned in New York. I never got a letter. I know now. Silence. He walked back to the desk. He did not sit. He put his fingertips on the edge of the wood and looked down at the folder with her name on it, as if it were a document from a country that no longer existed. Miss Vance, he said, and he heard himself use the surname and hated it in his mouth. Ilara, I did not know you had applied. The file came through corporate cleaning. I do not read those files. I would have read that one. I didn't know it was you. Park is a common name. Park is a common name. There are 40 Park Towers between Seoul and Manhattan. I didn't know it was you. I believe you. He believed her because he had watched her walk in. He had watched her sit down across from an interview she needed. He had watched her not flinch when he took the room. She had not come here to find him. She had come here to earn $612. He pulled his chair back. He did not sit down in it. I have to say something to you, he said, before you say anything else to me, because if I don't say it now, I will not have the courage to say it in an hour. She waited. I am married. I saw the ring, she said. I have been married for 8 years. I saw the ring. I am not going to lie to you and say the marriage is empty. I didn't ask you to. I am going to say the marriage is a marriage of families and of money and of one long silence. She did not answer. I am telling you that, he said, because I do not want you to walk out of this office thinking I hid it from you for 1 second. I did not walk out of that hospital hallway in New Jersey and marry someone the same week. 9 years passed. I looked for you. I looked for you in ways that a boy of 22 knows how to look. And then a father died, and a company had to be held, and a marriage had to be signed. And I signed it. Her hands were folded in her lap. The scar was hidden again under the cuff. Mr. Park, she said. Tae-hyun. Mr. Park. She said it a second time, and the room heard the door she was closing. I did not come here to sit down in front of a married man and be told about his marriage. I came here to clean 40 offices and go home to a stack of tuition bills. I do not know what happened to my letter. I do not know what happened to your letters. I know what happened to me for 11 years, and I know that the girl who mailed a letter into the dark grew up and paid her own way, and that girl is not going to be anybody's secret. He nodded once. He did not argue. I know, he said. Do you? I know. Then hear me finish. If you offer me this job because of a scar on my hand, I will not take it. If you offer me an office, if you offer me an apartment, if you offer me a car, if you offer me anything that would let another woman in this city look at me and think I sold something I do not intend to sell, I will not take it. I understand. But if the cleaning contract is real, she said, and it pays what the ad said, then I will take the cleaning contract. Under one condition. Name it. I do not see you alone in this office. I clean at 9 at night. I clean under the supervision of your operations team. I do not step into the private elevator. I do not take a private car home. I do not accept a gift. Not a coat. Not a coffee. Not a scarf in the winter. Nothing that any assistant in this building could file under a different word. Agreed. And if your wife finds out I once knew you when I was 19, she hears it from you, not from me, and not from a photograph. Agreed. And if at any point you cannot honor those conditions, I walk. That same night, without a discussion. Agreed. She stood. He watched her stand. Miss Vance, he said. Mr. Park, thank you for the letter. She stopped with her hand on the back of the chair. You never read it. I know. Then don't thank me for it. I am thanking the 19-year-old who wrote it, he said. Not you. She did not smile, but something around her mouth softened for a quarter of a second, and she did not hide it fast enough. She picked up her bag. She walked to the door. She turned at the door. Mr. Park. Yes. I am not the girl you carried in New Jersey. I know that. I am someone else now. I know that too. Good. She opened the frosted glass door. Choi Da-som was standing 3 meters away with her tablet against her chest, pretending to read the humidity report. Alara nodded at her, professional, level, and walked past her to the elevator bank. She pressed the down button. She waited. The elevator came. She stepped in. She did not look back. The doors closed. Inside the elevator, she put her hand against the mirrored wall to keep her knees under her, and she counted floors on the descent. 39, 38, 37. By the 24th floor, her breath was steady again. By the 10th floor, the tremor had left her hand. By the lobby, she was Alara Vance, 30 years old, hired for the executive cleaning contract at Park International Tower, $480 a week, night shift, starting Monday. She walked out through the marble lobby and into the cold. Upstairs, on the 40th floor, Taehyun stood at the glass wall and did not move for a long time. Then he walked to his desk. He opened the lower right drawer. He took out a small black lacquered box that had traveled with him from Seoul to New York to 2 different offices in 2 different countries and had never been opened in the presence of another human being. Inside the box was a plastic hospital wristband. Alara Vance, 19. Emergency intake. 8 sutures, right hand. He closed the box. He put the box back in the drawer. He locked the drawer. He picked up the internal phone. Da-som. Sir. The cleaning contract is confirmed. Miss Vance starts Monday. Her supervisor is Mr. Jin from operations. She reports to Mr. Jin only. Not to me. Not to my floor manager. Not to my private staff. Mr. Jin has full authority over her hours and her scope. Yes, sir. Second, I need a full internal audit of every piece of mail, courier, and internal message received at this office and at the residence between August of the year 11 years ago and April of the following year. Every log, every scanned envelope, every entry in the reception book at the old Fifth Avenue address. Choi Da-som paused for one breath. Sir. Yes. That is my wife's address book from before I moved here. I know whose address book it is. Yes, sir. Third, do not tell my wife. Yes, sir. He set the phone down. He walked back to the glass wall. Below him, Manhattan looked exactly the same as it had at 8 o'clock that morning, before a woman with a scar on the back of her right hand had walked into a job interview and taken the floor apart. By Friday, she had signed the contract with Mr. Jin from operations and refused the company transportation stipend in writing. By Monday night at 9 sharp, she was on the 40th floor with a wheeled cart, latex gloves, a clean apron over the white blouse and the black skirt, and a plastic ID card that read E. Vance, contract cleaning, level 40. She did not look at Taehyun's office door. She turned left instead of right and started at the conference rooms at the west end of the floor and worked her way back. Taehyun was not on the floor on Monday. He was not on the floor on Tuesday. He was not on the floor on Wednesday. She noticed on Wednesday night that his glass wall was dark and that the small orchid on the credenza had not been watered since Monday. She did not water it. She wiped down the outside of the door handle, checked her time card at Mr. Jin's console, and moved on. On Thursday morning at 11, a car pulled into the underground garage of Park International Tower, and Song Ha-eun stepped out of the back seat, carrying a rectangular Bergdorf Goodman lunchbox, wrapped in a black silk ribbon. Kwon Sang-hoon walked 2 steps behind her. She rode the private elevator to the 40th floor. She did not call ahead. She rarely did. She walked past Han Jae-won without acknowledging him. She walked past Choi Da-som with a smile that did not move the corners of her eyes. She stopped in front of the frosted glass door of her husband's office and knocked once with a single knuckle, the way she had knocked on that door for 8 years. Taehyun was inside. He was on a call in Korean with a shipping executive in Busan. He raised one finger at her without turning. She waited exactly 3 seconds and then opened the door anyway. Darling, she said in English, because she liked to speak English when there were American staff in earshot. I brought lunch. He looked up from the phone. Alara was 3 meters behind Song Ha-un in the corridor with a spray bottle and a cloth, cleaning the base of the credenza where the orchid stood. She had come up early for a supplies audit. Mr. Jin had approved it. She had not expected to see anyone at that hour. Song Ha-un turned her head very slightly. She had a beautiful neck for turning her head very slightly. Her eyes went from Alara's face to the ID clipped to Alara's apron, and back to Alara's face, and she smiled the smile she used for photographers. "Oh," she said, "you must be the new one." "I'm the cleaning contract," Alara said. "Ma'am." "How lovely." Song Ha-un set the Bergdorf lunchbox on the credenza, directly beside the orchid Alara was cleaning around, close enough that the black silk ribbon brushed the top of Alara's cloth. "Taehyun likes his floor spotless. I hope they told you that." "They did. He is very particular." "Yes, ma'am." Song Ha-un let her eyes travel down. White blouse, plain. Black skirt, plain. Modest bag on the floor beside the cart. Cheap shoes, no jewelry. Then she saw the scar on the back of Alara's right hand as Alara reached up to wipe the underside of the credenza. She stared at the scar for one heartbeat too long. Then her face went smooth again. "How did you get that?" she said. Alara did not lower her hand. She kept wiping. "An accident, ma'am, a long time ago." "How long ago?" 11 years. 11 years. Song Ha-un tasted the number and put it down carefully. "Where?" "An amusement park in New Jersey." The world did not stop. The elevator down the hall pinged. Somewhere a printer began to run. Choi Da-som, who had been walking toward them with a folder, saw Song Ha-un's face and stopped walking. She backed up 2 steps and pretended to check the folder. Song Ha-un smiled. "How charming," she said. "I hope it doesn't get in the way of the work." "It doesn't, ma'am." "Wonderful." She turned. She walked into her husband's office. She closed the frosted glass door behind her. Alara went back to cleaning the credenza and did not let her hand shake, because Choi Da-som was still in the corridor, and because the scar had already said everything the scar was going to say for one lifetime. Inside the office, Song Ha-un set the lunchbox on Taehyun's desk and did not sit down. "The new cleaner," she said in Korean, soft, pleasant. "How long has she been working here?" 3 days. "Who hired her?" "Operations." "Who signed the contract?" "Mr. Jin." "And you have never seen her before?" He looked at her over the phone he had ended without saying goodbye. He said nothing. She smiled. It was the same photographer's smile. "Interesting," she said. "She has a scar on her right hand." "So do a lot of people." "Not that one." He did not answer. "Eat your lunch, darling," she said. "It's your favorite. The chef in Chelsea makes it just the way your mother did." She left the office. She walked to the elevator. She rode down to the garage. Kwon Sang-hoon held the door of the car for her. She got into the back seat, folded her hands in her lap on top of the small quilted bag, and looked out the window at the concrete pillars sliding past. Then, in the private silence of a car moving under a city that belonged to her husband's family, she took her phone out and dialed a number she had not dialed in 11 years. "It's me," she said, in Korean. "I need you to come back to New York." She listened. "Yes," she said. "The letter, the one from the girl." She listened. "No, I burned that letter myself, in front of you, in the fireplace at the old apartment. I remember your face. You were paid $200,000 in cash that night, and you signed a piece of paper. I still have the paper." She listened. "Then don't fly," she said. "Call the 2 women who were in the room with us. Remind them that they signed the same paper. Remind them what happens to the paper if they open their mouths. And then call me back within 24 hours. She hung up. She looked out the window again. Manhattan rolled past in slabs of gray glass and gray sky. Behind her closed lips, Song Ha-un was already assembling the second execution of a plan she had first executed at 20 years old, when she had been the daughter of a smaller family, looking at a larger family, and had understood, before anyone else in her generation had understood, that a woman who intends to marry into a park does not leave a letter in a fireplace where a boy might read it. A woman who intends to marry into a park burns the letter and then burns the memory of the letter, and then, if a scar walks in 11 years later and starts wiping down her husband's credenza, she burns the scar too. By the time the car reached the mansion in Bergen County, She had made 3 phone calls in Korean and 1 in English. And by nightfall, 2 women who cleaned houses in Queens had received identical envelopes at their doors, each containing $20,000 in cash, and a single line in Korean that read, "Remember what you signed." At the same hour, 40 floors above Midtown, Elara Vance finished the executive cleaning route, punched out with Mr. Jin at 9:58, took the freight elevator down to the loading dock, walked out onto the sidewalk, and put on her thin coat against the cold. She did not know that a woman in Bergen County was already spending money to erase her. She only knew that she had $480 coming on Friday, that the tuition envelope was going to close, and that a man she had loved when she was 19 had kept his word for 3 days by not being on his own floor. She walked to the subway. On the platform, she stood behind the yellow line with her bag pressed against her hip and read the same advertisement 4 times without understanding it. A woman with a stroller stopped beside her. A man with a violin case stopped on the other side. The train came in with its wall of stale air. She sat by the door. At 59th Street, a young couple boarded and the girl was laughing at something on her phone, and the boy was watching her laugh, and Elara looked at the boy watching the girl and understood, for the first time in 11 years, that she had once been that girl and someone had once been that boy. She put her forehead against the cold pane of the window and closed her eyes. At 96th Street, she changed trains. At 125th Street, she came up the stairs into Harlem, and the air smelled of roasting nuts from a cart on the corner. The vendor was a man she had greeted twice in 6 months. He nodded at her tonight. She nodded back. 3 blocks, then 2, then 1, then the stoop of her building. The bulb in the vestibule was out again. She climbed the 4 flights in the dark by touch, and by touch she opened her door, and by touch she set the bag on the small table where the tuition envelope still waited. She turned on the yellow bulb. She sat down. She put both hands flat on the table on either side of the envelope, and she stayed like that for a long time. Then she got up. She went to the kitchen drawer where she kept her mother's things, the small wooden drawer at the bottom, the one with the loose knob that she had not fixed because the loose knob was the sound of the drawer opening, and the sound of the drawer opening was the sound of her mother alive. She reached into the back of the drawer and pulled out a folded photograph that had been folded and unfolded so many times that the crease had turned white. 19-year-old Elara, bandaged right hand held awkwardly against her chest. A 21-year-old boy in a torn windbreaker with his arm around her shoulders. Behind them, a neon Ferris wheel throwing red light onto the wet asphalt of a New Jersey parking lot. She looked at the photograph. She did not cry. She folded the photograph along the same crease she had folded it along 100 times, and she slid it back into the drawer, and she pushed the drawer closed with her hip, and the loose knob rattled once and went still. She washed her face. She hung the white blouse over the back of the chair. She set her alarm for 4:20 in the morning. Before she turned out the yellow bulb, she looked at the scar on the back of her right hand under the light one time, and the scar looked back at her the way it had looked back at her every night for 11 years, and she said nothing to it, because there was nothing left to say to it that she had not already said, and there was a shift starting at 9 the next night that she intended to work. She turned out the light. The scar on the back of her right hand caught the last of the sodium glow from the street through the thin curtain, and then the room went black, and somewhere across the river in Bergen County, a woman with platinum hair was sitting at a vanity mirror, pulling a single diamond earring from her ear, and she was smiling, and the smile did not reach her eyes. Song Ha-eun did not wait to be announced. The frosted glass door of the 40th floor executive suite swung open at 11 minutes past noon, and the sound of her Louboutin heels hit the polished floor with the cadence of a woman who had never in her life been told to wait. She carried a slim ivory paper bag with the Bergdorf crest on the side, and a smaller lacquered box balanced on top, tied with a cream silk ribbon. The receptionist, Margaret Hollis, half rose from behind the counter, opened her mouth, closed it. Ha-eun did not look at her. She walked past the counter, as if the counter were not there. Elara was on her knees at the base of the long conference glass wall, a soft white cloth in her right hand, wiping in slow, disciplined arcs. The scar on the back of her hand caught the noon sun for a half second and disappeared again under the sleeve of the white cotton blouse. She heard the heels. She did not stop wiping. "You must be the new girl," Ha-eun said. Alara finished the arc, set the cloth on her tray, stood, smoothed the front of the blouse with both palms, the way a woman smooths a uniform before facing a customer she has already decided to serve without flinching. She turned. "Good afternoon." "Good afternoon," Ha'inun echoed, and the two words came out of her mouth painted in a color that had nothing to do with greeting. She held the ivory bag up between them like an exhibit. "I brought lunch for my husband. From Daniel. He hates it when I forget. Mr. Park is in a call. I know when my husband is in a call." She stepped closer, close enough that the perfume, something French, something cold, settled on Alara's collar. Ha'yun tilted her head. Her eyes traveled from the low black shoes up along the plain skirt, up along the modest blouse, up along the neck and the mouth, and stopped on the eyes. She smiled. The smile did not reach her eyes. "Do you know why he hired you?" Alara did not answer. HR said the resume was thin. Community college, cleaning work, 12 years of the same address in Harlem. My husband looked at that resume for a full minute, and then he said hire her. She lifted the smaller lacquered box, turned it slowly in her fingers. He does that sometimes. He picks up strays. He calls it charity. I call it a Tuesday. Margaret at the reception counter had gone very still. "We hired you out of pity," Hyon said. The suite went quiet in the exact way rooms go quiet when the temperature drops 1 degree. Down the corridor, a printer ran a page. Somewhere, a phone gave one soft chime and stopped. Alara looked at her. She did not look down. She did not step back. She did not touch the scar on her hand, though her hand wanted to. She kept her weight even on both feet the way she had learned to keep her weight even on both feet the year she was 17, and her mother was dying, and the nurses at Harlem Hospital had shouted at her for crying in the hallway. "I came for work," she said, "not for pity." She lifted her chin 1 small degree. "And pity doesn't clean a floor this size." Ha'un's smile did not move. Her jaw did. The frosted door of the inner office opened. Taehyun stood in the frame. He had heard. Every syllable. He had heard from the moment the heels first hit the floor, because the moment the heels first hit the floor, he had ended his call. He held his phone loose in his left hand, and the left hand was the hand that was no longer wearing a ring. Neither of the women had noticed the ring was gone. Ha'un still had not looked at his hand in 3 months. He walked out of the office. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Ha'un." She turned, the ivory bag still lifted, the smile still on. "Darling, I was just out. Now." 2 words. Ha'un blinked. Once. In 8 years she had heard Park Taehyun raise his voice to a driver, to a lawyer, to his own father across a boardroom table. She had never once heard him speak to her, in the tone he had just used with her. It was not loud. It was flat. It was the tone he used when a subordinate had betrayed him, and there was nothing left to discuss. "Excuse me? You heard me. You will not humiliate a woman on my floor. You will not walk into this suite unannounced again. You will leave now, and you will leave through the front, and you will smile at Margaret when you pass her, because Margaret has done nothing to you." Park Hyun's laugh cracked on the second syllable. "Taehyun, in front of the cleaner?" "Especially in front of the cleaner." She stared at him. The ivory bag hung from her fingers now like something she had forgotten she was holding. He held her gaze the way a man holds a door open, patient, waiting for her to walk through it. She walked through it. She walked past Alara without looking at Alara. She walked past Margaret. Margaret said nothing. The heels went out the way they had come in, 1 degree faster. The frosted door hissed shut. Margaret Hollis sat back down at the reception counter. She did not look at Alara. She looked at her keyboard. She typed a sentence into an email she had been writing to her sister for an hour and pressed send without reading it back. Her hands were shaking. She had worked that front desk for 19 years. She had watched Song Ha-eun walk through that door once a month for 8 of those years. She had never in her life seen anyone tell that woman to leave. Alara had not moved. Down the corridor, past the frosted glass, past the printer that had gone silent again, Choi Da-som stood in the doorway of the small assistant's office, holding a tablet in both hands. She had heard every word. Her face was calm. It had always been calm. What her face did not show was that in the inside pocket of her charcoal blazer, folded into a plain white envelope, was a second envelope, older, the paper yellow at the corners, with the name Park Taehyun, written on the front, in a woman's handwriting she had not seen in 11 years. She had put it in her pocket that morning at 5:40 a.m. She had known, walking into the lobby at 8:12, that she was going to hand it to him before the day was over. She had not known Song Ha-eun would walk in first. She stepped back into the small office and closed the door softly. She sat down. She placed the envelope in the top drawer of her desk. She would give it to him after Alara went home. Tae-hyun turned toward her. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at the tray at her feet, the cloth folded in perfect thirds, the plain black shoes, the modest bag on the shelf by the wall. He looked at her hand. The scar was in shadow. He looked at her face. Ms. Vance. Mr. Park. I am sorry. She held his eyes for one full second. She nodded, one small nod, and picked up her tray, and moved to the next stretch of glass. She did not thank him. She did not perform the moment. She went back to work, because work was the ground under her feet, and the ground under her feet was the thing she still owned. He watched her for 3 seconds. Then he walked back into his office and closed the door and stood in the middle of the room with both hands loose at his sides and did nothing for a very long time. That evening, the black sedan came to the service exit at 6:14. Kwon Sang-hoon held the door open. Alara shook her head at him, the way she had shaken her head every night that week. I take the train, Mr. Kwon. Thank you. Mr. Park asked, and I answered. She walked to the 42nd Street station in the plain black shoes and rode the C train uptown standing, one hand on the pole, the scar hidden inside her sleeve. She got out at 145th and walked the 4 blocks to the walk-up and climbed the 3 flights and unlocked the door and set her bag down on the kitchen table next to the tuition envelope, which was still $612 short, but was going to be $800 less short by Friday because Mr. Park had wired her the first week of pay in advance, without asking, on the day she signed the contract. She stood at the sink and washed her face with cold water. She dried it on the same threadbare towel her mother had bought at the 125th Street Market in 2011. She did not cry. Not yet. She sat at the kitchen table under the yellow bulb. She opened the community college textbook to the page she had been on that morning at 4:40. Chapter 9, Hospital Administration Ethics. She read one paragraph. She read it again. She had not absorbed a word. She closed the textbook. She looked at the tuition envelope. She looked at the plate on the drying rack. She looked at the phone on the counter, which had not rung all evening and which she had not expected to ring. She thought about the woman in the ivory Chanel blazer. She thought about the phrase, "We hired you out of pity." She thought about the way Park Tae-hyun had said Ha-eun, out, now, 3 flat syllables in a language she had never spoken but had understood the shape of anyway. She thought about the way he had said Ms. Vance, afterward, with his hand still around his phone, and the way he had said, I am sorry, and the way he had not tried to make the moment about him. She thought about the scar. She had not thought about the scar in 11 years the way she thought about it now. She had thought about it 100,000 times, casually, in the way a person thinks about a birthmark. She had not thought about the amusement park. She had not thought about the boy who had held her hand in the back of a cab. She had trained herself not to. Her mother had been alive then. Everything had been alive then. She stood up. She turned off the yellow bulb. Across the river, the Park mansion was lit like a museum. Tae-hyun walked into the West Wing at 9:47, with his jacket over one arm and his collar already open one button. He had not eaten dinner. He had not spoken to a soul in the car. Halmione Yoon Boknam was at the top of the west stair holding a folded charcoal robe, and he looked at her and she looked at him, and she understood every question he had not asked yet, and she stepped aside. Ha-eun was in the sitting room off the master bedroom. She had changed into cream silk. She was pouring a glass of Sancerre. The single diamond earring was on the vanity behind her, next to its mate, and she was smiling at herself in the mirror the way a woman smiles at a mirror when she has decided the day is going to end on her terms. He closed the door behind him. Ha-eun. Darling. She did not turn. Sit down. Something in the tone made her turn. She sat, not on the chaise, on the edge of the vanity bench, wine glass balanced on her knee. She kept her back straight. She kept the smile. She was very good at the smile. He remained standing. He did not raise his voice. He never raised his voice with her, and tonight the not raising sounded like a blade being laid flat on a table. 11 years ago, he said, Did a letter come to this house addressed to me? The wineglass stayed on her knee, her lips parted, half a breath. She composed the answer inside a corner of her mouth. It took her 1.5 seconds too long. A letter? From New York. From a girl. 19. Handwritten. English. Would have arrived the summer after Cheongju. Taehyun. 11 years ago I hadn't even met you yet. You met me in the spring of that year. She laughed. The laugh had no shoulders. Darling, do you know how many letters come to this house? Halmione handles the mail. I asked Halmione. The wineglass tilted 1 degree on her knee. A single drop ran down the outside of the bowl and fell on the cream silk and bloomed there like a small dark flower. I asked Halmione, he said again, before I came upstairs. Whatever she told you. She told me a letter came from a Miss Alara Vance on a Thursday in August, that it was set on the tray in the front hall for me, that it was gone from the tray by evening, that she saw you carrying it into the fireplace room, that she saw Miss Choi's assistant and the second-floor girl standing at the door of that room, and that you paid both of them the following week. Ha-eun did not move. He did not raise his voice. Did you burn the letter? She set the wineglass down on the vanity. Slowly, the rim rang once against the marble. Taehyun. Did you burn the letter? You were going to marry me. Answer me. I was your fiancé. Answer me. Yes. The word fell into the room and lay on the floor between them, like something dropped from a high window. He did not step forward. He did not step back. He looked at her the way a man looks at a photograph of a person he thought he knew and finds that in the photograph the person is holding a knife he never noticed before. You read it. Yes. In front of witnesses. They were staff. You paid them. I secured them. You burned a letter addressed to me. I burned a letter from a girl who did not matter. He was quiet for a long moment. She mattered. Ha-eun laughed. It was a small, ugly laugh, the first ugly thing that had come out of her face in 8 years of marriage. To who? To a boy who spent 1 week bandaging a stranger at an amusement park? She was a summer. She was less than a summer. She was a wristband and a cheap coffee in a hospital cafeteria. She was going home to Harlem, Taehyun, to a walk-up, to a mother dying of cancer. She was never going to sit at this table. She was never going to carry this name. She was never going to know what to do at a state dinner. Your father would have. My father is dead. Your father was alive then, and your father told you what she was. My father told me nothing about her. He never saw the letter. He would have told you what she was. You made the choice for him, and for me. I made the choice for us. There was no us. He said it quietly. He said it the way a man closes a book he has been reading for 8 years and finds on the last page that the book was not the book he thought he had been reading. He set his jacket over the back of the chaise. He walked to the window. He looked at the garden lights on the lawn. He did not look at her. Halmione kept a copy. Ha-eun's head turned an inch. What? The night you burned it. Halmione was in the pantry off the fireplace room. She heard you read it aloud to the 2 witnesses before you fed it to the fire. She sat down at the kitchen table when everyone had gone to bed, and she wrote down every sentence she could remember. In her own hand, in Korean, on the back of a rice receipt. She kept it in a Bible in the housekeeper's chest. That is not admissible anywhere. I did not ask if it was admissible. He turned from the window. I asked if it was true. She stared at him. Also, he said, Miss Choi's assistant is now Miss Choi, Dasam. She has been in this house for 11 years. She was 29 when you paid her. She kept the envelope you handed her, with your handwriting on the outside, in the safety deposit box of a bank in Seocho for a decade. This morning she brought it to my office. She said she should have brought it in year 1, and she is sorry. She resigned effective tomorrow. I refused her resignation. She works for me. She has always worked for me. You never understood that about her. Ha-eun's mouth opened. Nothing came out. And the second-floor girl, he said, went home to Ulsan in 2018 with lung cancer. She wrote her own confession before she died. Her daughter mailed it to my father's estate lawyer 6 months ago. The lawyer sat on it until I asked. He looked at the wine on the vanity. He looked at the 2 diamond earrings side by side. He looked at her. You did not marry a boy in love with you, Ha-eun. You married a boy in mourning. You made sure of the mourning. Then you spent 11 years telling him the morning was his own fault. Taehyun, I am not finished. She closed her mouth. Tomorrow morning at 10, my lawyer will present you a document. You will sign it. In it, you will renounce the park name, the park properties, the park foundation seat, and any claim to the Cheongju holdings. In return, I will not release the letter, the envelope, the confession, or Halmioni's statement to your father or to your brothers. Your father will believe the divorce was mine. Your face at the country club will remain intact. That is my gift to you. It is the last one. You would ruin your own house for a cleaner. He looked at her for a long moment. She is not a cleaner. She is exactly a cleaner. She came into your office with a mop and a resume that would embarrass a bus driver. You are Park Tae-hyun. You are... I am the man who let a woman convince him for 11 years that he did not deserve the one letter he ever received. He picked up his jacket. Sleep in the guest wing tonight. Halmioni will show you. Tomorrow you leave through the service gate at 6. Kwon will drive you. You will go to your mother in Songnam. You will not call the press. You will not call my brother. You will not call Elara Vance. If any of those 3 things happen, the letter, the envelope, and the 2 confessions will be in the hands of your own family by dinner. Do you understand me? She did not answer. Do you understand me? Yes. He walked to the door, his hand on the handle. He did not turn. For the record, she lifted her chin. She wrote that she still loved me. She wrote that her mother had died in July. She wrote that she had waited 3 months to write because she did not want the letter to sound like grief asking for rescue. She wrote that she was working 2 jobs. She wrote that she was going to community college in the fall. She wrote that if I ever wanted to come, she would be at the same walk-up on 148th Street. She wrote her address twice, once in the letter, once on the back of the envelope, in case the letter got wet. He looked at the door. You burned it in a fireplace that costs more than her rent for a year. He opened the door. Good night, Ha-hoon. He closed it behind him. Halmioni was waiting in the hall with the folded charcoal robe. He took it from her with both hands. She did not speak. He did not speak. He walked down the west stair and through the long gallery of ancestor portraits and out to the black sedan idling under the porte cochere, and Kwon opened the door for him, and he sat in the back and looked at the ring finger of his left hand for the length of the driveway, and when the gate closed behind them, he closed his eyes. Where to, boss? The tower? It's after 11. I know what time it is. The 47th floor was dark except for the corner office. He walked in without turning on the overhead. He sat in his chair. He did not open his laptop. He opened the bottom left drawer and took out the small lacquered box he had kept in that drawer since 2015. He set it on the desk. He did not open it. He knew what was inside. He had known for 11 years. At the same hour, uptown, Elara was sitting on the edge of her bed in the plain white blouse she had not yet taken off. The tuition envelope was on the pillow beside her. She had not opened the mail. She had washed her face. She had eaten half a bowl of rice and a piece of grilled fish, standing at the counter, because standing was easier than sitting. She had brushed her teeth. She had turned off every light except the small lamp on the nightstand. She sat on the edge of the bed with her hands folded in her lap. The scar on the back of her right hand caught the lamp. She looked at it a long time. Then, for the first time since she had buried her mother in a plot she could not afford, and had signed the loan papers in the funeral home office with a pen that did not work well, she cried. Not loud, not shoulders, just tears, running down a face that had not permitted them for 11 years, over a jaw that had held itself level in front of a woman in Louboutins that afternoon, onto a plain white cotton collar that had been washed too many times to hold a stain. She cried for the 19-year-old girl who had mailed a letter into the dark and sat by a mailbox for 3 months waiting for an answer that a woman with platinum hair had burned in a fireplace on the other side of the world. She cried for 2 full minutes. Then she stopped. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. She stood. She hung the blouse on the wooden hanger by the closet, the way her mother had taught her to hang a work shirt, so it would be ready in the morning. She turned off the lamp. She lay down. She closed her eyes. Somewhere in the city, Park Tae-hyun was still sitting in a dark office at a desk with a small lacquered box on it that he had not yet opened, and somewhere in Bergen County, a woman in cream silk was packing a suitcase with hands that shook for the first time in her life. And somewhere in Seocho, a woman named Da-som was standing on a balcony holding an envelope she had carried for 11 years, and somewhere in the servant wing of a mansion, an old woman named Halmione Yun Bok Nam was on her knees in front of a small wooden shrine, giving thanks in a whisper too soft for anyone but the dead to hear. Alara opened her eyes in the dark. The scar was warm against her cheek where her hand had come to rest. She whispered one word into the pillow, in a voice so quiet even she almost did not catch it. Tae-hyun. Across the river, in the dark office on the 47th floor, a man who had not slept in 2 nights lifted the lid of a small lacquered box and looked down at a strip of plastic dated August 2014 and read the name on it out loud, once, in the same voice. Then he picked up the phone. The number he called was not on any registry. Kwon Sang-hoon answered on the second ring, voice flat, no greeting. Tae-hyun spoke 6 words. Bring me Halmione. Tonight. Quietly. He put the phone down. The lacquered box sat at the corner of the desk, closed. Inside it, the plastic wristband slept, brittle and yellowed. Alara Vance, 19, still legible in blue pen. He did not open it again. He had opened it enough for one night. He rose from the desk. He did not put the jacket back on. He walked to the window instead and pressed one palm against the cold glass, 40 floors above a city that owed him nothing, and that he owed nothing either. His breath fogged a small circle on the pane. He watched it shrink. He watched it disappear. 11 years, disappearing the same way. At the mansion, the east wing lights were already off. Ha-eun's floor. She had taken herself to bed early after the fight, or she had taken herself to another room, or she had taken herself somewhere else entirely. Tae-hyun did not check. He crossed the marble hall in silence and turned toward the servant wing, where he had not walked in 6 years. The corridor there was narrower, older, papered in soft cream. The lamps were small. The floor was wood, not stone. It creaked once under his shoe and he stopped, listening. From behind a door at the end came the low sound of a radio, tuned to a Korean gospel station, turned down so as not to disturb anyone. He walked toward it. He knocked once. Halmione Yun Bok Nam opened the door in her gray uniform, apron still tied at the waist even at this hour. She did not look surprised to see him. She looked as if she had been waiting 11 years for the knock and had only been unsure which night it would come. "Sit down, young master," she said. He did not sit. He stood in the small room and looked at the framed photograph on her dresser. A boy of 6 in a hanbok, her son who had died before Tae-hyun was born. Then he looked at her. "Halmione, 11 years ago. A letter arrived here for me. From New York. Do you remember it?" She held his gaze without blinking. She had washed his hair as a boy. She had put mercurochrome on his knees. She had lied for him twice and never lied to him once. "I remember it." The words landed. He absorbed them standing. "Tell me." She sat down on the edge of her narrow bed and folded her hands in her lap. Her voice was small and steady, the voice of someone who had rehearsed this account for over a decade, in case God or a grandson ever asked. It came in a white envelope, thin paper, American stamps, your name written in a young woman's hand. It arrived on a Tuesday. Your father was in Seoul. You were in Busan for the training. Madame Ha-eun was here. She was your fiancée then, 3 months from the wedding. And she took the letter from the tray before Cho manager could bring it upstairs. I saw her. Cho manager saw her. Kim from the kitchen saw her. She did not hide. She read it in the small drawing room by the fireplace. She read it standing. She read it twice. Then she called Cho manager and Kim into the room and read it aloud in front of them. His hand closed at his side. He did not speak. She read the American girl's words in a voice like she was reading a joke. She said the name, Alara. She laughed at the handwriting. She said the address of a hospital in Manhattan. She said the girl was asking you to come back. The girl said she still loved you. The girl said she had waited a year. The girl said she was not asking for a promise. She was only asking for an answer. Halmione paused. She looked at her own hands. Madame Ha-eun folded the letter, then she opened the fire grate, then she dropped it in. She waited until the paper was gone. She turned to Cho manager and to Kim, and she said, "If either of you speaks a word of this to Master Park, your families do not eat this year." Then she gave them each an envelope. Cho manager's envelope was thick. Kim's was thicker. Kim had a child in surgery that month. Taehyun let out a breath through his nose, slow, controlled. The kind of breath a man releases when he is deciding not to break furniture. And you, Halmione, she did not pay you. She tried, I did not accept. Then why did you not tell me? The old woman raised her eyes. There was no shame in them. There was something worse. There was patience. Because she said if I opened my mouth, she would send me back to Jeju to die alone. Because I had no son left to protect me. Because you were already engaged to her. Because your father had signed the alliance. Because I was 70 years old and I was afraid. And because, she said, I did not know the American girl. I did not know she was real. I thought she was a summer. I thought you would forget. I did not know she still had the scar on her hand. He looked at her. He looked at her a long time. You saw her. I saw her leaving the tower yesterday. Kwon drove past the service exit. I recognized the hand before I recognized the face. My mother had a scar in the same place from a knife. The eye remembers hands. He closed his eyes for 1 second, then he opened them. Cho manager. Kim, are they still with the household? Cho retired 2 years ago. She lives in Ilsan with her sister. Kim is still in the kitchen, and they will speak now, if I ask. Halmione nodded once. They will speak. They have been carrying it. They are old. They want to die clean. He crossed the small room and did something he had not done since he was 8 years old. He knelt in front of her chair and pressed his forehead against the back of her folded hands. He stayed there for the time it takes a clock to tick 12 times. She did not move. She only laid her thumb, very gently, against the crown of his hair, once. I will not let her send you to Jeju, Halmione. I know, young master. I will not let her touch you, or Cho, or Kim. I know. He rose. His face was empty of what a face is usually made of. He walked out of the servant wing and back down the marble hall and up the stairs to his own study, and he closed the door, and he sat down at the desk, and he wrote 3 names on a piece of paper. Cho Man-ok, Kim Soo-jin, Yoon Bok-nam. Under each name he wrote what she had witnessed. He signed the paper. He put it in the second drawer, next to the lacquered box. Then he took out his phone again and called Choi Da-som. She answered before the first ring finished. I need signed statements from Cho Man-ok and Kim Soo-jin, notarized, tomorrow before noon. Send Kwon to Ilsan tonight. Kim, you speak to yourself at 6 a.m. I need copies at the lawyer's office by 2. I need originals in the safe by 3. Understood, sir. Da-som. Sir, do not tell my wife anything. Do not answer her calls. If she asks where I am, you have not seen me since Friday. Understood. He put the phone down. Outside the window, the sky above the estate was the color of wet slate. He watched it lighten by one shade, then another. Then he rose and walked to the closet and took out a shirt he had not worn in a long time, plain white, no monogram. The shirt he had bought himself at 22 before he had learned what the park name required. He put it on. He rolled the sleeves once. He did not put on a tie. He looked at himself in the mirror above the dresser, and for the first time in 8 years he saw a face he recognized. Across the river, in Harlem, Ilara had not slept. She had come home from the tower after the day shift, ridden the subway with her bag on her lap and her scarred hand curled inside the sleeve. She had climbed the 4 flights to her apartment. She had put her key in the door. She had walked in, and she had not turned on the light. She had sat down on the edge of the bed in the white blouse and the black skirt and the low black shoes, and she had put her palms flat on her knees, and she had stayed like that for 1 hour without moving. Then she had cried. Not loudly, not with the kind of crying that empties a person. The kind of crying that runs down a woman's face while she looks straight ahead at a wall, hands still flat on her knees, breath even, mouth shut. The crying of a woman who did not know until this moment that she had been carrying something for 11 years, and now knew, and had nowhere to set it down. She cried for the 19-year-old on the train platform at Coney Island with 8 stitches in her hand and a boy's phone number written in blue pen across her palm because he had run out of paper. She cried for the letter she had written 6 weeks later on a yellow legal pad, 4 drafts, and mailed to an address in Seoul his cousin had given her. She cried for the year she had waited for an answer. She cried for the way she had eventually decided that his silence was an answer, and had folded that decision small enough to carry, and had carried it while she buried her mother, and while she worked 3 jobs, and while she went back to community college at 28. and while she pressed her white blouse flat this morning at 4:40 a.m. under a yellow bulb. She cried for the girl who had been told for 11 years that she was not the kind of girl a man like that writes back to. When she was done, she washed her face at the kitchen sink with cold water and did not look in the mirror. She poured a glass of water and drank it standing. She put the glass down. She said, out loud, in the empty apartment, in a voice that was not shaking, "All right." Then she took off the blouse and hung it on a wire hanger by the window so the morning air could set the collar. She took off the skirt and folded it. She lay down under the thin blanket. She did not sleep. She stared at the ceiling and she watched the shape of the streetlight move across it as a car passed on the avenue below. She let herself feel, for the first time since she was 19, the specific weight of a truth she had not been permitted to hold. He had not chosen not to write. Someone had chosen for him. That truth was heavier than the 11 years of silence. It was also, in a way she did not yet have words for, lighter, because a silence chosen by another person was a silence that could still be broken. She closed her eyes. She did not sleep, but her chest, for the first time in a decade, rose and fell without a small held breath at the bottom of it. At 6:30 in the morning, she was on the platform at 125th Street, with her bag on her shoulder and her scarred hand tucked into the sleeve of her cardigan. The train came, she got on. At 7:40, she was in the service entrance of Park International Tower, signing the register with the pen that was tied to the counter with a string. Margaret Hollis at the front desk did not look up. Margaret Hollis had been given a note the night before, on cream stationery in a woman's tight handwriting, telling her to notify a certain number the moment the new cleaner arrived. Margaret Hollis, whose granddaughter needed braces, and whose son had been laid off in February, had folded the note into her uniform pocket and had sent the text. At 7:42, Song Ha-eun rose from the makeup vanity in the master suite and told Kwon Sang-hoon to bring the black car around. She did not put on the diamond riviere. She put on the pearl rope. Pearls, she had once told a friend, were for hunting. At 8:15, Alara was on the 40th floor with the cart, restocking the paper in the small copy room next to the executive elevator. She had said good morning to two associates. She had not seen Tae-hyun. She had not expected to. He had told her, at the end of the day yesterday, in one sentence in the corridor, "Take tomorrow slowly. I will find you." She had nodded and had said nothing. She was taking today slowly. She was kneeling to lift a fresh ream of paper out of the bottom shelf when she heard the click of heels on marble behind her. She knew the click before she turned. Every woman who has ever cleaned a floor knows the sound of a rich woman's heel on marble. It is different from other heels. It moves as if the marble owes it something. Alara straightened. She did not turn immediately. She set the paper on the counter first. She smoothed the front of the white blouse with the flat of her hand. Then she turned. Song Ha-eun stood in the doorway of the copy room, pearls at the throat, cream Chanel, wine lip. Behind her, at a distance of 6 paces, Kwon Sang-hoon stood with his back to the elevator and his hands folded in front of him, watching the corridor. "Ms. Vance," Ha-eun said. Her English was flawless. Her voice was low. "Mrs. Park, I would like a word. In private." Alara looked past her, at Kwon. "He is not in private." Ha-eun's smile did not move. "He is furniture. He does not hear." "He hears," Alara said. Ha-eun tilted her head 1 degree. She stepped into the copy room and pushed the door partly closed behind her, leaving it open enough that Kwon could still see in. The room was small. The two women stood a meter apart. Ha-eun was 2 centimeters taller in the heels. Alara did not adjust her posture to compensate. "You are very calm," Ha-eun said. "I am at work. You know why I am here. I have an idea." Ha-eun's eyes moved once, quickly, from Alara's face to Alara's right hand, and the scar there, and back up. She had not seen the scar before. She had heard about it. It was different to see it. "Let me be efficient with your time, Ms. Vance. My husband is a sentimental man on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, he is a park. Today is Wednesday." Alara did not answer. "You are the daughter of a nurse. You are studying accounting. You have $4,000 in credit card debt and $600 left on this semester's tuition. Your rent is $920. You take the 4:58 train home. You eat dinner from a pot you made on Sunday. I know your life, Ms. Vance. I have paid to know it." That must have been expensive. It was not. Ha-eun took 1 step closer, not threatening, Precise. You will never be more than the cleaner of my husband's office. He is 32 years old. He is running an empire. He does not have the luxury of a scar on a hand. He has a wife with the correct surname, a family that has invested 20 years in this alliance, and a board that will remove him within a quarter if he becomes ridiculous. You are a story he is telling himself this week. Next week he will be tired of the story. I am telling you this as a kindness. It is the only kindness you will receive from me. Alara let the silence sit for 2 seconds. Then she said, evenly, "Are you finished?" Hayun's smile flickered once at the corner. "I am." "Then I will speak, briefly." She took a small breath. "I did not come to this building for your husband. I came for the wage. I still come for the wage. I will clean the copy room this morning, and the conference room at 10, and the executive kitchen at 11, and I will go home at 4:30. I will do that tomorrow and the day after. That is what I am paid for. What Mr. Park does with his marriage is not on my cart. Do not pretend you have not thought about it. I did not say I have not thought about it. I said it is not on my cart." Ha-in looked at her for a long moment. Something in her face shifted, very slightly, not softening, reassessing. She had come expecting a girl she could dismiss with money or fear, and she was standing in front of a woman who had already priced fear and found it too expensive. "You are a fool if you think he will choose you." "I know what I am, Mrs. Park." Alara held her gaze. "Do you?" The line landed under the pearl rope like a small, clean knife. Ha-un's throat moved once. Just once. She recovered inside a second. She stepped back. She smoothed the front of her Chanel jacket with a manicured hand. She smiled the smile she used at charity galas. "You will regret this conversation, Ms. Vance." "Perhaps." Alara turned back to the counter and picked up the fresh ream of paper. "But I will regret it while I finish stocking this room, if you will excuse me." Ha-un stood in the doorway 1 beat longer than was dignified. Then she turned. Kwan opened the elevator without being asked. The doors closed on the pearls. Alara set the ream of paper down on the counter. Then she placed both hands flat on either side of it. Then, very slowly, she let her head drop forward until her forehead almost touched the paper. She breathed in. She breathed out. She stayed like that for the count of 4. Then she straightened. She lifted the ream. She loaded the tray. She wheeled the cart to the conference room. Her hands did not shake until she was alone in the executive kitchen at 11, unloading the dishwasher, and then they shook so badly that she had to set a coffee cup down on the counter before it fell. She placed both palms flat on the counter next to the cup and she waited for the shaking to pass. It passed. It always passed. She had learned that at 19 with 8 stitches in a hand. Shaking was a wave. Waves move on. She finished the kitchen. She finished the floor. At 4:28, she signed out at the service desk. Margaret Hollis did not look up. Margaret Hollis had already sent the second text of the day. Alara rode the elevator down. She walked out the service exit into the late afternoon light on Lexington. She turned right toward the subway. She did not see the black car parked half a block up on the opposite curb, engine off. She did not see Taehyun in the back seat, jacket off, sleeves rolled once, watching her walk. He did not roll the window down. He did not open the door. He watched her walk to the corner. He watched her wait for the light. He watched her cross. Only then did he speak, quietly, to Kwan in the driver's seat. She held her ground. "Yes, sir." With Ha-un. "In the copy room." "Word for word, sir. Margaret at the front desk gave it to me for $200. Give her 400 and tell her the next text she sends about Ms. Vance goes to me first." "Yes, sir." Taehyun sat back against the leather. He looked out at the corner where Alara had disappeared into the throat of the subway station. In his inner pocket, wrapped in a soft cloth, sat the lacquered box. In his other pocket, folded twice, sat a notarized statement signed at 11 that morning by Cho Man-ok, retired household manager, and countersigned by a lawyer in Ilsan. In the safe at the estate, a second statement, signed at 7 a.m. by Kim Soo-jin, kitchen supervisor. 3 witnesses, 2 signatures, 1 wristband, 11 years. He looked at his watch. Friday was the family dinner, the full bloodline table. His father, her father, both mothers. The cousins with voting shares, the uncle from the Busan branch. 22 people around the long rosewood table under the chandelier his grandfather had commissioned in 1972. 3 days, Home, he said. Kwan pulled the car into traffic. Behind them, the tower rose gold in the setting sun, its 40th floor lit against the pink sky, empty now of the woman with the scar on her hand, who was at that moment underground on the Uptown 4, standing because she had given her seat to a pregnant woman, one hand curled around the pole, the other, scarred, resting quietly inside the cuff of her cardigan, holding on to nothing. At the estate, Taehyun walked past his wife in the front hall without looking at her. She was standing at the base of the staircase in the cream Chanel, waiting. She had spent the afternoon rehearsing. She had a speech. She opened her mouth. He did not stop walking. Haun. Yes. Friday. The dinner. 8 sharp. Wear the black. Wear the pearls if you like. It will be the last time you sit at that table. He was already halfway up the stairs. She stood at the bottom in the cream silk, one hand on the banister, her wine lip parted, and for the first time in her adult life she did not know what her next sentence was. Upstairs, he closed the door of his study and locked it, and he sat down at the desk, and he opened the second drawer, and he laid the lacquered box in the exact center of the polished wood. He did not open it. He looked at it. He thought of the copy room. He thought of the pearls at the throat, and the flat, calm answer under them. He thought of the woman on the platform at Coney Island at 19, bleeding through a rolled t-shirt, while a boy who did not yet know he was going to inherit an empire had lifted her and carried her 6 blocks to the emergency room, and he thought of the smaller weight of a hospital wristband being cut off a wrist with plastic scissors, and he thought of the softer weight of that same wristband being lifted quietly out of a bin by a boy who did not yet know why he was keeping it. He thought about how a person can carry an object for 11 years and only understand on a Wednesday afternoon in a black car on Lexington Avenue what the object was for. Then he took out a fresh sheet of paper, and he wrote, in careful hangul across the top, the seating order for Friday's dinner. He wrote his father at the head. He wrote his uncle from Busan on the right. He wrote Hawun's father across from her mother. He wrote Hawun at his own left hand, the position of the wife, the position she had held at every family table for 8 years. He looked at her name a long time. Then he pressed the pen down and drew a single quiet line through it. The Park Estate sat above the Hudson like something built to outlast the century. 12 cars pulled up the gravel drive between 6 and 7 that evening, one after the other, each one delivering a different piece of the 2 bloodlines about to collide under the same roof. Halmyeoni Yoon Boknam met each guest at the door with a small bow, took the coats without a word, and pointed them to the long dining hall where 40 places had been set at a single walnut table. Fo Taehyun stood at the head of the table before anyone arrived. He wore the charcoal 3-piece, but the tie was gone. The dragon on his neck was fully visible above the open collar. He had not sat down once in the last hour. Dasam stood 2 steps behind him, tablet held flat against her chest, chignon precise. She did not check her watch. She had checked it 12 minutes ago. Ha-eun arrived last, on purpose. She swept into the hall in a cream Chanel dress with pearls at her throat, blonde hair catching the light from the chandeliers, smile ready for the room. She took her usual seat at Taehyun's right hand, as though nothing in the last 3 days had happened. "You're late," Taehyun said, level, public. "I'm on time," Ha-eun answered, spreading her napkin across her lap. He did not correct her again. The Song patriarch cleared his throat from across the table. Uncle Song, 71, gray-suited, the man who had negotiated Ha-eun's marriage contract 8 years ago. He raised his glass a fraction as a greeting to Taehyun. Taehyun did not raise his back. The Park elders sat to the left. Taehyun's mother, the widow in dark silk, back straight, hands folded. His uncle beside her, thin, precise, watching Taehyun's face and not his wife's. Halmyeoni Boknam entered from the service door, laid a small lacquered box on the table beside Taehyun's plate, and withdrew. She did not look at Ha-eun. She had stopped looking at Ha-eun the moment she signed the statement 3 nights ago. Ha-eun's eyes flicked to the box. Just for a second, she reached for her wine glass to cover the flick. The first course came out. Nobody ate. Taehyun let the silence hold for the length of one breath. Then he stood. Chairs across the table shifted an inch. This was not the sequence. The sequence was drinks, then dinner, then speeches from the elders. The head of the house did not stand first. "I called this dinner," Taehyun said, to formalize something that this family has been asked to pretend for 8 years. The room went still in the way rooms only go still when the man at the head is about to break the surface. Ha-yoon set her glass down. Slowly. Taehyun, I have not finished. She stopped. He did not raise his voice. He never raised his voice. 8 years ago, he said, a marriage was arranged between the Park House and the Song House. It was signed in ink, sealed with a rope of pearls, and understood by everyone at this table as an alliance. Not a love, an alliance. The Song patriarch's jaw tightened. He did not object. I honored that alliance, Taehyun continued. I gave it my name, my roof, my presence at every dinner this family required. I did not ask questions. I did not look behind doors that I was told not to open. I did what was asked of me. He placed one hand flat on the walnut. The other rested on the lacquered box. 3 days ago, he said, I opened one of those doors. Ha-hyun's fingers curled around her napkin. She did not move otherwise. Taehyun lifted the lid of the box. Inside, on a bed of pale silk, lay a plastic hospital wristband, yellowed at the edges, the printed name still legible in faded blue ink. He did not touch it. He tilted the box just enough that the person seated across from him could see. Elara Vance, he said quietly, age 19, dated 11 years ago. He let the box sit open. I cut this off her wrist, he said, in a hospital corridor in New Jersey. She had been bleeding into a folded jacket for 40 minutes. I sat with her through 8 sutures. I told her I would come back for her. I meant it. Ha-eun's throat moved once. Her lipstick held. 6 months later, Taehyun said, a letter arrived at the Park House, sent from a Harlem address, addressed to me. It never reached my hand. The Song patriarch's eyes moved, slowly, to his niece. It was intercepted, Taehyun said. It was read. In front of 2 members of household staff. It was burned in the drawing room fireplace. I have signed statements from both of those witnesses. They are notarized. They are dated. They are here. Dasam stepped forward, laid a slim leather folder on the table beside the box, stepped back. Nobody reached for it. Halmione Baknam stood in the doorway with her hands folded at her waist. Her eyes were on the floor. She did not need to say anything. Her presence in the doorway was the signature. The letter, Taehyun said, was a girl of 19 writing that she still loved me, that she was frightened, that she was asking me to come back. His voice did not shake. I did not answer that letter, he said, because I never received it. For 11 years I believed she had chosen not to write. She believed I had chosen not to answer. Both of us built the next 11 years of our lives on a lie signed inside this house. He closed the box. The click of the small brass clasp was the loudest sound in the room. Taehyun, Ha-eun said, sharp now, public. You are humiliating this family over a paper you cannot even prove existed. I can prove it, he said. With servants. With 2 witnesses, he said, whom you paid to keep silent. One of them kept the receipt of what you paid her. It was folded inside her Bible for 11 years. Ha-eun's mouth opened. Closed. She brought it to me on Tuesday, Taehyun said. She said her conscience was heavier than the money. The Song patriarch set his own glass down. He looked at Ha-eun. He said nothing. His silence was worse than a sentence. Ha-eun stood up. She stood up because sitting down while her name was being taken apart was worse than standing. She stood up because her mother had taught her, at 11 years old, that a woman never lets a room see her small. For a cleaner, she said, not loudly, precisely, you are burning this house down for a cleaner. Taehyun looked at her the way a man looks at a stranger he has just placed. No, he said. She waited. I am recovering from you, he said. That is a different sentence. A small sound left her throat. It was not a word. You will leave this house tonight, he said. You will take what is yours from the West Wing. You will not enter the East Wing. You will not enter the estate offices. You will not appear at any park event, private or public. You will use the Song name from tomorrow morning. Your family has been notified. Your family has agreed. He glanced once at the Song patriarch. The old man nodded. Once. Small. Ha-eun's face did not move. Her eyes did. If you retaliate, Taehyun said, in the press, in the courts, in the whisper network you have built in this city, The recordings I have of the 2 staff you paid will go directly to your father, to your father's brother, and to the board of your family's holding company. They will not go to the tabloids. They will go inside your own house. Choose." She did not choose out loud. She sat down. She sat down slowly, the way a woman sits when her knees have made the decision for her. The rest of the table did not move. Taehyun turned to Halmeoni Boknam at the doorway. He gave her the smallest possible bow, not a nod, a bow, from the head of the house to the woman who had swept the floor of it for 40 years. "Halmeoni," he said, "thank you." The old woman's eyes filled. She did not let a single tear pass. She bowed back, deeper than his, and stepped out of the doorway. Taehyun sat down. He picked up his soup spoon. He said calmly, "Please eat." Nobody moved for a long moment. Then the Park uncle picked up his own spoon. Then Taehyun's mother. Then, one by one, the 2 tables of relatives that had come to watch an alliance dine and were now watching a house rearrange itself in real time. Aun did not lift her spoon. She sat with her hands in her lap and looked at a point on the walnut 2 inches to the left of her plate. She did not eat, she did not cry, she did not speak. She had built the last 11 years of her marriage on making silence work for her. Now the silence was working against her. She stood, finally, after the second course. She did not excuse herself. She walked the length of the hall, past the eyes of both bloodlines, past the widow in dark silk who did not turn her head, past the Song patriarch who did not stand. At the doorway she stopped. She turned back, only halfway. "Taehyun," she said. He looked up. "You will regret this," she said. "No," he said. "I already regretted the last 11 years. This is the first thing I have done in 8 of them that I will not regret." She left. The double doors closed behind her with a soft, expensive click. Kwon Sang-hoon was already in the hall. He walked her, at a respectful 3-step distance, to the black car that Da-sam had ordered 40 minutes earlier. He did not open the door for her. He held it. There is a difference. The car pulled down the gravel drive that she had ridden up as a park bride 8 years ago in a white car with a red ribbon. She did not look back at the house. Inside the dining hall, Taehyun set down his spoon. He looked at his mother. His mother, who had not spoken all evening, gave him a single small nod. It was the first approval she had given him in 3 years. It was also the last thing that needed to happen at that table. He stood. "Finish the dinner without me," he said. "Halmeoni will look after you. Da-sam will drive the guests home." He walked out of the hall while the second course was still steaming. He did not go to his study. He did not go to the west wing. He walked straight through the estate, past the koi pond, past the north garage, and got into the back of the second car Da-sam had ordered. This one was gray. It did not carry the park plates. "Manhattan," he said. Kwon Sang-hoon, who had returned in the first car, nodded once and pulled out onto the private road. The estate lights dropped behind them. Taehyun sat with the lacquered box on his knee and did not open it. Elara had not been in Harlem all evening. Da-sam had called her at 4 in the afternoon with a simple line, "Mr. Park would like a word tonight. 10 p.m. executive suite. Not the office, the suite. He wants you to know it is not a summons." Elara had asked one question, "Am I still the cleaner?" "You are Elara," Da-sam had answered. "Come as Elara." Elara had not asked what that meant. She took the subway. She wore the white cotton blouse. She wore the plain black slacks. She wore the modest black shoes and the modest black bag. She did not put on lipstick. She washed her face twice and dried it slowly and looked at herself in the small mirror above her sink and let her hand rest, for the first time in 11 years, deliberately on the scar across her right hand. She said out loud, to no one, "Then we go." The Park International Tower lobby was empty at 10 p.m., except for the night guard, who nodded her through without a word. Margaret Hollis was long gone. The elevator to the 40th floor accepted her thumbprint on the first try. Da-sam had added it that afternoon. The corridor was dim. Only the sconces along the walnut wall were lit. The executive suite door was already open. Taehyun was standing at the window when she came in. He was in the white shirt. The jacket was folded across the back of the leather chair. The tie was gone. The sleeves were rolled once, cleanly, above the wrist. The onyx and silver wedding band was not on his hand. Manhattan burned outside the glass behind him. He did not turn immediately. He gave her the courtesy of one breath to arrive on her own terms. Then he turned. The dragon on his neck caught the low, warm light. His eyes found her face first, her hands second, the scar third. "You came," he said. "You asked," she said. He did not move toward her. "I don't have a speech," he said. "I had one on the drive-in. I threw it out on the FDR." "Good," she said. He tried to smile. It did not fully arrive. "I want to say the thing I did not get to say in that hospital," he said. "But if I say it tonight, it is a promise made by a man in a rolled-up sleeve. And you have already been promised things by a man in a rolled-up sleeve, so I will not say it." She waited. "I am asking for time," he said. She did not answer immediately. She let the room hold the sentence. "Not an apartment," he said. "Not a promotion. Not protection. Not a car in the morning. Not the name park anywhere near yours until you have decided, alone, whether you want it near yours." "Go on," she said. "I am asking for time," he said, "to be Tae-hyun, not the boss, not the husband, not the man who signed papers in a walnut room, just the boy who carried you across a parking lot at 19 years old and swore, in a hospital corridor with a plastic wristband in his hand, that he would come back for you." She looked at him for a long moment. "You did come back," she said. 11 years late. You came back." His mouth moved. He looked down. He looked up. "You saw me before the name," he said. "In that interview room, you saw me before you knew who I was. You looked at me like you were trying to remember something. I was trying to remember the same thing. Give me time to be the man that memory belongs to." She took one step closer. Not two. One. "Tae-hyun," she said. "Yes. I am not going to fall into your arms tonight. I know. I am not going to move into this building. I am not going to let you pay my tuition. I am not going to sign a piece of paper you draft with Dasam and call it a chance. I know. I am going to keep cleaning this floor," she said, "until I finish my degree. On my terms, under my own contract, signed by me, not gifted. Yes. And I am going to see you," she said, slowly, publicly, as a woman who is neither hiding nor being hidden. He nodded once. "Every day," he said, "if you want, or every week, or every month. Your pace, not mine." "Every day," she said. "And truth? Every day." "Every day," he said. She took the second step. She lifted her right hand. The scar caught the light between them. Thin, white, the trace of 8 sutures a boy of 21 had sat beside a girl of 19 to count. She did not offer the hand. She extended it. "There is a difference." He looked at it for the length of one breath, then he closed his hand around it. Not the way a boss closes a hand around a cleaner's. Not the way a husband closes a hand around a wife's. The way a boy of 21 had closed his hand, in a hospital corridor 11 years ago, around the hand of a girl who had been bleeding for 40 minutes and had not cried once. "This time," he said, "I don't let go." "Then don't," she said. He did not. They stood there for a long moment, not kissing, not embracing, just standing with her scarred hand inside his, in the middle of a room with the whole city burning silently on the other side of the glass. Manhattan blinked and shifted below them. 30 million small lights that did not know two people had just decided something quiet on the 40th floor of a walnut building. Alara looked at their joined hands. The scar was catching the low light. His thumb rested, without pressure, on the exact ridge of it. "Tae-hyun," she said. "Yes. The 19-year-old girl who mailed that letter is not coming back. I know. The 30-year-old woman who walked in this door tonight is who you get. That is who I came back for." She let out a breath she had been holding, quietly, for 11 years. "Then we start there," she said. He nodded. Once, small. The way she had learned, in less than 3 weeks, meant yes in his language. She did not sit. He did not offer her a seat. There would be time for sitting. Tonight was for standing, together, in a room where they had first re-recognized each other across a walnut desk and were now recognizing each other on their own terms. He lifted his free hand and, with the careful movement of a man who does not want to spook a bird, brushed one strand of hair back from her temple. His fingers did not linger. They returned to his side. She smiled. It was small. It was hers. It was the same smile the boy in the hospital corridor had seen her wear through 8 sutures without crying. "I have to go home," she said. "I know. I have class at 8. I know. Kwon Sang-hoon will not be driving me." "He will not. I take the subway. You take the subway. I pay for my own ticket. You pay for your own ticket." She let her hand slide, slowly out of his. Not withdrawn. Released. At the door, she turned back. He had not moved. "Taehyun," she said. "Yes. Tomorrow, 11 a.m., the East Stairwell Landing, 10 minutes, just to talk. I'll be there." "Bring coffee," she said. 2 sugars, no milk. That is how the 19-year-old girl took it. The 30-year-old woman still takes it that way. Some things do not need to be redecided. He smiled. Fully this time. The frost cracked all the way. 2 sugars, he said. No milk. 11 a.m. She closed the door behind her. He stood at the window a long time after she was gone. He did not look at Manhattan. He looked at his own hand, still curled slightly, the way it had been when it was closed around hers. He walked to the leather chair. He picked up the lacquered box from the side table. He opened it once more. He looked at the plastic wristband, yellowed at the edges, the small blue letters that spelled her name at 19. He closed the box gently. He did not put it in a drawer. He carried it with him out of the suite, down the private elevator, through the empty lobby, past the night guard who nodded once, and into the back of the gray car. "Home," he said. Kwon Sang-hoon pulled out into the avenue. Taehyun set the box on the seat beside him. He did not sleep on the drive. He watched the city slide past the window and, for the first time in 11 years, did not feel that he was moving through it alone. At the estate, the lights had been lowered. The dining hall was empty. The guests had been driven home. Halmyeoni Boknam was waiting in the front hall with a small cup of barley tea on a lacquer tray. He drank it standing. "Halmyeoni," he said. "Yes, young master." "Haoon's things." "Packed. 6 trunks. In the west courtyard, the Song family car will collect them at 7. Her keys. Returned. Dasom has them. Her name. Removed from the household register at midnight. The paperwork is on your desk." He set the empty cup on the tray. "Halmyeoni," he said quietly. "The letter. 11 years ago, you knew." She did not lie to him. She was too old to lie to him. "I knew," she said. "I was afraid. She was the young mistress. I was the maid. I chose the wrong thing. You brought it to me on Tuesday. I brought it to you on Tuesday. That was the right thing. It was late. It was the right thing," he said again. He set his own hand, briefly, on her small shoulder. Then he lifted it. Then he walked past her, up the stairs, to a bedroom that was, for the first time in 8 years, only his. He set the lacquered box on the nightstand. He did not open it again that night. He did not need to. He knew what was inside. Outside his window, over the Hudson, the first thin band of gray was already touching the far edge of the sky. Somewhere across the river, in a small kitchen in Harlem under a yellow bulb, a woman in a plain white blouse was setting an alarm for 6:40. She placed her modest black bag by the door. She laid her books on the kitchen table. She let her right hand rest, palm up, on the wood. The scar caught the light from the yellow bulb. She looked at it a long time. She was not chasing a dream anymore. She was walking toward one, on her own 2 feet, in her own shoes, at her own pace, on a Tuesday morning in Harlem, with 2 sugars waiting on the east stairwell landing of the 40th floor. She turned off the light. The city outside her window kept burning, 30 million small lights that still did not know. And somewhere between the Hudson and the East River, between a walnut room and a yellow bulb kitchen, between a boy who had waited 11 years and a girl who had walked 11 years without knowing she was being waited for, a thin white scar across the back of a right hand was, at last, catching the light in the exact way it had been meant to catch it. She slept. He slept. The city did not. Tomorrow, at 11 a.m., on the east stairwell landing of the 40th floor of the Park International Tower, a Korean man in a rolled-up white sleeve would arrive with 2 coffees in his hand, 2 sugars, no milk, and a woman in a plain white blouse would meet him there. And this time, neither of them would let go. The gray band on the horizon widened. A single delivery truck rolled down Lenox Avenue. A pigeon landed on the fire escape outside her window and shook the dust off its wings. The kettle on her stove ticked as it cooled. None of it woke her. She had slept, for the first time in 11 years, through the hour that used to bring her upright at 4:40 in the morning. Across the river, Taehyun turned once in his sleep and rested his hand, without knowing he was doing it, on the lacquered box beside him. The dragon on his neck was still. The clock on the wall was still. The house was still. Palmioni Baknam, downstairs, unhooked the wedding band from the chain around her own neck, held it in her palm for a long moment, and slipped it back under her collar. She had waited 11 years to give a young man his letter. She had given it to him. She could sleep now, too. She did. The Park estate breathed once, quietly, in the dark, the way a house breathes when the wrong door has finally been closed and the right one has finally been opened. And above the Hudson, the first thin edge of morning came up slow and clean and unhurried, the way things come up when they have been waited for long enough, and neither of them would let go. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever mailed a letter into the dark and spent years believing no one ever read it? Have you ever recognized someone by a scar on their hand before you recognized their face? Have you ever kept your dignity in a room where everyone expected you to break? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, hidden truth, and second chances, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.